We're going to start the meeting. And due to the circumstances that we're all doing it virtually, like we did the last meeting, I'm going to read our rules we're going to follow this evening for the public hearing, so everybody's on the same page as we go forward. So, good evening. This is the regularly scheduled January 28th meeting of the Geneva Planning and Zoning Commission. I am Scott Stocking, the chairman of the commission. Tonight, for the benefit of those in the audience, I'm joined by Community Development Director David DeGroot, City Planner Chayton True, and our public hearing transcriber. Ron Sadek, who's a city attorney, is also joining us, but he's doing it remotely. Tonight's meeting is being conducted virtually by video conference utilizing the GoToWebinar virtual platform due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. With our use of an electronic meeting platform for this meeting, there may be some technical difficulties as we move through our agenda, so please bear with us. The meeting will proceed without a physically present quorum, and the Planning and Zoning Commission, in strict adherence to Governor Pritzker's disaster declaration, Executive Order 2021-03, related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the public health concerns affecting the city of Geneva. As a requirement of the Opens Meeting Act, I am required to be physically present at the meeting location. With the exception of limited city staff and myself, all commissioners, applicants, and participants in tonight's meeting are at different locations in accordance with social distancing guidelines. The City of Geneva recently proceeded to Tier 1 COVID-19 mitigation, which allows for small gatherings of a certain size to resume. However, this meeting will remain virtual as outlined in the meeting's agenda and in public hearing procedures which were posted prior to the community's recent transition to Tier 1. This is an effort to remain consistent with the publicly published notification and to avoid any possible confusion on how the meeting will take place. A virtual public meeting will continue at tonight's meeting for item 5A regarding Emma's Landing. This public hearing was opened during the previous Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on Thursday, January 14th, 2021, where the commission moved to continue hearing to this meeting due to time constraints. Letters were sent to property owners within 500 feet of the proposed project, notifying these individuals of the date, time, format, and subject of the public hearing that began on January 14th. A public notice and with the same information was also published in Daily Herald 15 days prior to beginning of the public hearing. All interested parties are invited to present testimony for and against the petition and cross-examine witnesses presenting testimony for and against the petition. Every individual wishing to desiring to listen and or participate in the meeting has been provided the opportunity through virtual participation information included in various public notices and the agenda for this meeting. Written comments may be sent during the public hearing to public comment at Geneva IL US. If at any time during the meeting you experience technical difficulties trying to join or provide comment, please refer to the meeting agenda for further guidance and the email gotoadmin@GenevaILUS. Both email addresses are provided in the agenda published in the city's website and the scrolling ticker at the bottom of your screen. At this point, I will describe the remote public hearing proceedings of the Planning and Zoning Commission for those of you who are not familiar with the process. As mentioned, a virtual public hearing will continue from our last meeting for Emma's Landing project. Thus far, during the public hearing, we've heard testimony from the Burton Foundation, the petitioner for the proposed project, where plans and an overview of development were provided. This was followed by an initial set of questions presented and comments presented by the commission to the petitioner. After questions by the commission members, individuals of the public were given an opportunity to present evidence and testimony for and against the application. Public participants were provided to present testimony through speaking during a virtual public hearing, either through written comment or by written comments provided by the city. Following testimony of the public, the commission moved the public hearing, continue the public hearing at this meeting due to time constraints in an effort to analyze the testimony provided thus far in the public process, or in the process. We are now at the stage of the public hearing where any individuals from the public who have not spoken, I'm going to emphasize, have not spoken during the last portion of the public hearing may proceed to provide testimony. Please use your raised hand feature through the virtual meeting platform to speak and provide your testimony. When you are called upon, please remember to unmute yourself before proceeding with your testimony. We ask that you first state your name when it is your turn to speak. If your comment has already been made or your question has already been asked, it's not necessary to repeat it. Remind members of the public to refrain from veering off public topic and direct comments to the subject matter. Just as a reminder, all speakers are asked to present their comments in a respectful and courteous manner. After providing comment, each speaker will be muted once again. Please note that there may be a slight delay between becoming unmuted and being able to begin speaking. All comments will be recorded so that written transcriptions and minutes can be provided of this meeting. Members speaking during the public hearing agree and understand anything they say will be considered sworn testimony and affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Following any additional testimony from the public, the petitioner will be given an opportunity to respond. City of Geneva staff may also expand upon applicable questions or comments provided through the testimony thus far. Following the response from the applicant and any additional information provided by staff, Commission may continue to ask questions, make comments, and close the public hearing to establish the record and begin deliberation. In the event that the Commission needs additional time to review this evening's submitted testimony and the forthcoming established record, the Commission may close the public hearing tonight and begin deliberations at a future meeting. In order to help reduce background noise, I would please remind all commissioners to mute themselves except when they are addressing the Commission or the applicant. Commissioners will also need to state their name prior to speaking and prior to providing a roll call vote to better assist our record keepers. For instance, stocking, yea, nay, or abstain. We did pretty well on that towards the end, but I'll keep reminding folks. So with that, that's the process we're going to follow this evening. Hopefully we're all on the same page. Celeste, please call the roll.
I can do that. Metaskill.
Here.
Evans.
Evans here.
Holloman.
Holloman here.
Mead.
Mead here.
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse here.
Slivka.
Lefka here.
Stocking.
Stocking here.
Okay, you have a remote quorum.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so next is the approval agenda. Again, a roll call vote, and commissioners, please state your name. Celeste?
I need a motion. I need a motion.
I need a motion, yes.
Yes.
First a motion.
Commissioner Mead moved to approve the agenda.
Lefka second. Rittenhouse second.
Okay, all those, I'll just voice vote, I guess. Celeste?
No, we have to, call the roll. Metaskill?
Metaskill here.
No, it's aye or nay or abstain.
My apologies. Metaskill, aye.
Okay. Evans?
Evans, aye.
Holloman?
Holloman, aye.
Mead?
Mead, aye.
Rittenhouse?
Rittenhouse aye.
Slivka?
Lefka aye.
Stocking?
Stocking, aye.
That passes.
Very good. Okay, our next item is approval of the minutes of the January 14th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Evans, move to approve.
Rittenhouse second.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, Celeste?
Okay. Metaskill?
Metaskill, aye.
Evans,
Evans, aye.
Holloman,
Holloman, aye.
Mead,
Mead, aye.
Rittenhouse,
Rittenhouse, aye.
Slivka,
Slivka, aye.
and Stocking.
Stocking eye.
That passes.
All right, thank you, Celeste. Okay, our single item we have on our agenda is a public hearing. This is continued from our January 14th, 2021 meeting. It's for Emma's Landing. It's an annexation, a comprehensive plan amendment, preliminary and final plat of subdivision, and final plan unit development plan to allow the construction of a 45-unit affordable rental town home project. The location is generally located north of Lewis Road and Heritage Court intersection. The applicant is the Burton Foundation, represented by Tracy Manning. I'd just like to note at this time that we have received additional comments from the public, written comments, and it's posted in our meeting agenda section on the city's website under the minutes tab. So if you want to see those comments as posted, they're on the website right now. Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I would also note that the applicant has provided a response to some of the comments and questions that were raised at the January 14th meeting, and those are included in that same link under the minutes tab for tonight's meeting.
It's all part of the same package. Okay, so we're going to continue the public hearing portion. So we're looking for additional public comment from folks that have not spoken on this matter in the first meeting. So we know there were some people that expressed desire to speak and for whatever reason could not speak in the last meeting. So now is your opportunity to speak on this matter. Again, which we want you to do on your application is to raise your hand that you wish to speak. You will be showing up on the application here and we will call you out to do so.
So I see a few individuals that have already spoken. So if there's anybody who has not yet spoken who would like to provide testimony, please raise your hand at this time. The commission recognizes Svetlana Golovaka. I'm now going to unmute you. You are now unmuted. Go ahead and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Svetlana Golovaka, and I live at 872 Wood Avenue in Geneva. It's 300 yards away from the proposed development. Our family moved here 5 years ago. This location was picked, and it did not disappoint because of its proximity to the beautiful walking and biking path, parks, and trails. So there is a paved bike lane along Lewis Road, marked among the other 69 miles of trails throughout Geneva Park District. It's the part of Geneva's bikeway implementation plan that provides endless benefits to the neighborhood. I have a question. Is there intent to preserve biking path along Lewis Road integrated into upcoming development? And I have one more question. So should I continue and then give the opportunity to answer them, or should I just pause?
No, you just continue to ask what questions there are. We're keeping a track of all of them and we'll make sure they get answered during the Q&A part with the applicant. So.
All right, thanks. Secondly, I'd like to address the location of the proposed development. On Burton Foundation's website, you can find this description of Centerville Courts property. The property is close to a variety of retailers, public services, and potential employers located within 1 mile of the property, including Walmart, Kmart, restaurants, grocery store, Dollar General, thrifty hardware store, fire department, police department, hospital, doctor's offices, 2 elementary schools. Now, Sterling Manor, where the new development is proposed, is a typical residential community. There is no access to public transportation, no corner store for pantry staples nearby. Everything is driving distance away, over 2 miles away. Geneva offers fabulous school district, great small town charm, festivities and recreation, 2 upscale supermarkets, French market in summer, fine dining restaurants, just perfect tourist destination, not so much affordability. This will unintentionally segregate new tenants from the rest of the community. They will have to take their business to nearby Batavia and St. Charles. Right location and proper management would be the key for the success of the affordable housing project. Burden Foundation has a history of poor management and poor maintenance of their affordable housing properties. There are multiple reviews from the tenants suggesting that. This project cannot be approved as proposed. No commissioner would be proud to have his name next to it. There are too many questions left unanswered or ignored because the correct answer is no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the commission now recognizes Tom Simonian. Please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members. I want to first go on record of saying that I am all for affordable housing, so long as it's fair, equitable, and makes sense for all parties. I don't believe that this development as it stands satisfies as being fair, equitable, and making sense for all parties, but I do believe with some changes it can, in fact, deliver a fair, equitable, and make sense for all parties. Before I go into my reasons, there's a bit of housekeeping I want to make sure is on the record. I have some concerns about citizens' due process being violated and the legitimacy of having these meetings virtually and during COVID. I say this because of the following reasons. On the call last week, a number of citizens mentioned that they were getting texts and emails from folks who were trying to connect to the virtual meeting and were unable to do so. In my opinion, it's a violation of the folks' due process.
Mr. Simonian, please speak to the matter before the committee. With all due respect, sir, your legal opinion with respect to due process is noted, but right now it's not germane. Make your comments to the petition, please, sir. I would like this to be on record. I'm a citizen. I'd like to say my piece. Make your comments with respect to the zoning and planning matter, please. That's what's germane and that's what's at issue. And you have the right to speak to that, not take a lectern and attempt to monopolize this hearing for different purposes. Please speak to the matter that's relevant.
I said this is my opinion. I have the right to my opinion. So you're telling me I don't have the right to my opinion?
Well,
Last chance, sir. Do you wish to speak to the item before this Planning and Zoning Committee?
Sure.
If you do, please afford yourself of that opportunity.
Okay. Well, there's some rules here that I'd like to know what the rules are. Is that okay?
what we did at the beginning, our opening statement, we did outline that extensively on how we're proceeding with the hearing.
Okay.
And obviously you have a contention with that, and that.
No, I'm just trying to protect my due process rights as well as.
You're speaking, sir, so your due process rights are not being utilized in a proper manner. You are now speaking. Please speak to the matter before this commission.
Okay. Let me start with my argument then, unfair, equitable, and making sense. In August 2020, the City Council approved the city's affordable housing plan through Resolution 2020-50. This would equate to about 180 additional affordable housing units in the community. The proposed development would mean that the Sterling Manor subdivision would be contributing 25% of the total affordable housing units required to meet the 10% goal. In my opinion, I don't think this is fair. They should not have to do the heavy lifting of 25% of the city's requirement to get to that 10%. The economic impact study that was submitted shows that there's a direct correlation between the proximity to an affordable rental community and the annual price appreciation. The neighborhoods located within a half a mile of the affordable apartments will have a median annual appreciation of roughly half the citywide annual appreciation. In my opinion, that's not equitable. Also, I guess I have a question, which is, did when this property was zoned, was an economic impact study done on this property? Because according to Illinois Supreme Court ruling, it's a requirement that be done. And if it has not been done, then we're premature in this development. Number 3, the second variation requested is from section 12-3-2J to reduce the maximum allowable centerline offset of intersecting right-of-ways from 125 feet to 25 feet. The request would allow a street centerline offset of Emma's Way where it meets Lewis Road in Heritage Court. The center line of the street refers to the imaginary line that extends parallel within the center of the platted street right away, and ideally should also be the center line of the constructed street with said right of way. Geneva's subdivision code requires the center line of the streets to align with the center line of the street opposite the intersection, if applicable, to form a standard intersection layout. The Geneva subdivision code prohibits a street center line offset less than 125 feet to avoid awkward intersections. The proposed variation would allow a 25-foot offset. Although the center lines of Emma's Way and Heritage Court would be offset, the actual paved surface of Emma's Way has been shifted in the right-of-way to better align with paved surfaces of Heritage Court. The alignment, now it says, the alignment should mitigate the concern of potential vehicle conflicts at the intersection. I don't believe that this commission in the city of Geneva should be accepting a variation that they don't even know might mitigate the concern of potential vehicle conflicts at an intersection. With regards to density, in my opinion, the fair thing would be, at the very least, would be to reduce the density of this development to between 20 and 22 units. In the last meeting, I believe it was an engineer for the applicant that stated he could manage 95% of the water, but could not account for handling 5% of the water. In my opinion, this is a real problem. Where is 5% of that surface water on a large parcel going to settle? And who's going to handle it? And who's going to be responsible for it? And what happens when it freezes? And what happens when it damages through the freeze and through flooding, et cetera, et cetera? So lastly, I am going to submit to the council, so it's on record, my concerns about the process, regardless of what Mr. Sandek has to say. It's my opinions, it's my opportunity to assist and to speak. I will submit those to the commission to be put on record. And lastly, as I mentioned, I believe that there is a compromise here. And I believe that compromise is a combination, mostly reducing the density, changing the alignment of the development, and including senior affordable in this equation as well. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
The commission now recognizes Andrea Jenix. Andrea, go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. My name is Andrea Genicus, 2887 Caldwell Lane. I would like to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission for extending the public hearing until you were able to do your own research and get answers from the Burton Foundation regarding the outstanding questions that we have. I want to tell you that I am one of the people last week that had plenty to say but couldn't get on, so I appreciate you listening to me tonight. I don't feel that the 2 weeks that we were granted and the fact that we just received answers to some of our questions at 2:40 today could possibly allow you to grasp the magnitude of what the Burton Foundation is proposing and what that means for the residents of Geneva. I haven't been able to speak at other meetings, but I have exchanged some emails, phone calls with aldermans. I've read through hundreds of emails, documents, agreements between city officials and the Burton Foundation. I've spent countless nights familiarizing myself with the application and some of the documents that the Burton Foundation submitted to the IHDA in order to receive low-income housing tax credits. To tell you the truth, I'm kind of tired. I'm old and I'm tired. I'm tired of the many proponents of Emma's Landing using us NIMBYs, send threatening messages on social media and copying and pasting the same scripted email to the public comment section for the meetings, yet many have never seen, conducted, or any of the research projects.
I'm going to have to interrupt you right now. I'm not going to debate questions back and forth in social media. That stuff occurs on all applications before us.
I'll move on. Thank you.
That's not germane to what we're trying to deal with.
I want you to know that I do want affordable housing in our city. I want to see developments that benefit those of us that need it. I'm old. I need affordable housing. I want more economically diverse community. I want one where my grandchildren will thrive. But really, what I really want is to make sure that the residents of Geneva and the city officials truly understand what it is that the Burton Foundation is proposing. What I don't want to do is push a large-scale development through in a residential neighborhood just to check a box because it's the right thing to do at this moment in time. What I don't want to see is the new residents of Emma Landing set up for failure because of the lack of transparency, the myths, and the purposeful omissions. The Burton Foundation has given us all in order to try to push the development through. I trust that this Planning and Zoning Commission will continue to do their research before considering anything having to do with Emma's Landing, because this is a development that will be here long after we're gone. Throughout the past year, all we have ever asked for is transparency. Transparency from our elected officials, from the Burton Foundation. In Ms. Manning's response that were posted to the public comments this afternoon, she replies that the majority of questions with this statement in the spirit of openness and transparency. My questions this evening are directed toward the Burton Foundation, as I feel Ms. Manning really needs to clarify some information for the commission and for the public. In the spirit of openness and transparency, I ask that the commission allow Ms. Manning to respond to the questions directly and immediately this evening. Here's number one. We initially heard about Emma's Landing on March 10th, 2020, 2 days before the first PZC concept review. However, 2 months before this meeting on January 9th, 2020, that's the exact date, the Burton Foundation had asked the City of Geneva to donate the land. In the spirit of openness and transparency, don't you think the taxpayers of Geneva should have known that this was going to be a land donation at the time of the March 12th meeting? Why is this very important fact omitted? Instead, the City of Geneva and the Burton Foundation tried to push this through a state-mandated stay-at-home order where residents of Sterling Manor had to invest tens of thousands of dollars to hire a personal attorney to provide that it was unlawful to donate the land without a supermajority vote. We pay taxes for our city attorney, Ron Sandak, and there's no excuse for why this was overlooked. Conveniently, the Burton Foundation was able to come up with the funds to purchase the land at 80% of the appraised value on the day before the July meeting. Ms. Manning, can you please tell me why on your application to the IHDA you stated that the main parcel is being donated by the City of Geneva, if this was not in fact true? It is because you knew that if the land was not donated, you would not receive enough points to receive low-income housing tax credits. As stated in your email to David DeGroot, is that true? That was my first question.
Okay, so noted.
Shall I go on to my second question?
Yes, we're taking all the questions now. We'll queue them up and then we'll answer them one at a time during her reply. Yes.
I'm going to lower my volume. I'm just so passionate. I just don't want
No,
you to
that's
think
fine.
I'm
We can-
yelling.
we
I'm
can
just,
hear you
I'm
fine
just
and
really
clear.
upset.
We can hear you
Please,
fine and clear.
excuse me. I apologize. Here's number 2. In all of the Emma's Landings renderings that can be viewed through the City of Geneva Agenda Center, Door Creek Construction is listed in the general contractor, with Brian Fellhauer listed as the point of contact. He is also listed on the Burton Foundation IHDA application as the general contractor, yet calls and emails to Mr. Fellhauer have gone unanswered. In tonight's public comments on page 122, question number 1, you were asked, why did you pick Door Creek Construction to build this building? To which you responded, Door Creek Construction has significant experience with quality housing built throughout Illinois as well as other states. They have built several of TBF's buildings, including Windmill Manor in Batavia. Ms. Manning, in the past 4 meetings held over the past 10 months in the midst of a pandemic, and in an ongoing spirit of openness and transparency, do you think it may have been a good idea to disclose that Brian Fellhauer of Door Creek Construction, the general contractor that you have appointed for Emma's Landing, is your husband? At a Sterling Manor HOA meeting that you did attend on December 5th, 2019 at 1 o'clock at Panera Bread, you also touted the fact that your husband and Mayor Burns were friends and that you have talked about this for a long time. If the Burton Foundation operated in full openness and transparency, shouldn't this have been disclosed through an identity of interest certification when you applied for and were awarded low-income housing tax credits for the state of Illinois to support the development? Do you feel that the Illinois Housing Development Authority, Geneva City Council members, planning and zoning commissioners, and residents deserve the right to know that if Emma's Landing is approved, that your husband stands to make a profit of 6% of hard construction costs that you estimated on your application to be $13,267,769. Based on my quick math, your husband and essentially you then stand to make roughly $796,067.90, in addition to the funds that you personally will be receiving from this development. That is my question number 2. Shall I go on to number 3?
Yes,
After the July 13th meeting, when it was asked why the City of Geneva would donate nearly 8 acres of land for $10 when the Burton Foundation was purchasing the adjacent 3 acres of land owned by the Nelson family for, well, gee, what was it, $700,000? We were told that there was a third party who was buying the land from the Nelsons and donating it to the Burton Foundation. I don't know about you. I don't have $700,000 lying around for 3 acres of land. And if I did, I may want to see some sort of return on my investment. Fast forward to the 37.5-minute mark on the PZC public hearing on January 14th, where the City of Geneva, Commissioner Mead asked Manning about the Mill Street Station and her involvement, since that development is the genesis for the design of Emma's Landing. Ms. Manning informed him that while the Burton Foundation is not the developer, she said that she's friends with the developer. I did some research on Mill Street Station and see that the developer is Iceberg Development, which is owned and operated by Jim Bergman. For context, the Burton Foundation and Iceberg Development were recently co-developers for Windmill Manor in Batavia. And as Ms. Manning has also stated, her husband's construction company was the general contractor. But in my research that I received by a FOIA request, I found an email dated Monday, March 16th, 4 days after the first PZC meeting from Ms. Manning to David DeGroot, where she states that an option agreement was being sent to Greg and Joy Nelson. On April 6th, the Nelson property was put into a land trust. And on April 16th, David DeGroot requested documentation that the Burton Foundation was under contract for the Nelson property. At that point, Ms. Manning provided the Bergman-Nelson option agreement dated 4/7/2020. Once again, in the spirit of openness and transparency, Ms. Manning, can you tell us why your friend and co-developer, Mr. Bergman, decided to purchase 3 acres of land over $500,000 and then donate it to the Burton Foundation so that you could have an access point? Part of tonight's public hearing deals with the dedication and annexation of this property. So I think residents really deserve to know that if this property is annexed to the City of Geneva, what, if any, kickbacks will Mr. Bergman be receiving? And I don't mean to insult anyone, but I'm telling you that it goes through people's minds. My question number 4. In the City of Geneva's Just the Facts document that was posted in the agenda for the July 13th meeting, it lists that there are 100 children expected to be living at Emma's Landing. Yet, in the updated fact sheet published on December 31st, we can now expect only 10 children. Meanwhile, Kretschmann Associates completed a study for the Burton Foundation on May 26, 2020, and using data from New Jersey, determined that we could expect 36 students. You provided this study to David DeGroot on May 27, 2020. In the spirit of openness and transparency, can you please tell us how many students we can expect? If it's only 10, are you no longer marketing these units as family units? Question number 5. On the same fact sheet, it states that tenants must make 60% or less of the area median income. For some units, tenants may qualify if they earn up to 80% of the area median income. On your IHDA application, you state that the 14 units will be targeted to households with incomes at or below 30%, with 7 units set aside for referrals through the state referral network. 13 units will be targeted to households with incomes at or below 50%. 18 of units will be targeted to households at 80%. In the spirit of transparency, can you please tell us why, over the past 10 months, you have never once mentioned that 7 units will be set aside as supportive housing? And I encourage you to look up supportive housing. Do you feel a property manager who is in the office from 9 to 5 is really equipped to aid students who are in supportive housing units? I have to tell you, I'm a retired school teacher. My answer probably wouldn't be the same as Miss Manning's, okay? It's not going to work. Wouldn't it make more sense for someone who has experience in mental health services, substance abuse services, medical services available 24 hours a day? Are these services permitted in R7 zoning? I hope you understand why I'm tired. I hope you understand why I seem a little bit angry. We are one community that has been divided by the Burton Foundation. I think we can all agree that we have one common goal: to help those in need. No one has spent their life in service more than I have, helping people in need. But at what cost? To the commission, I ask that tonight you truly digest what I have brought to the table, because I think some of it comes as a shock to most of you. Is the Burton Foundation the type of developer we want to build affordable housing in Sterling Manor? Do we want to cut corners and make back alley deals to line our pockets when our common goal is supposed to be to help people? Or would it make sense to take a step back, reassess our goals, determine how we can best bring affordable housing throughout all of Geneva with a developer that has our best interests in mind? I am a person that is looking for affordable housing as I age, somewhere where I can live and be peaceful. I'm telling you, this is not something that we can decide on quickly. And it seems to me, and COVID was no help, that this has been pushing through. And every time I think, well, maybe, I come up with these facts. I come up with people making money. And everyone should make money, but at what cost? We have a lot of people in Geneva. We have spent our money and our time in Geneva. I would like to stay in Geneva, but I really believe that the commission needs to look at this carefully before making any decision. I do want to add too, that some of us that have been questioning this, people have been somewhat attacking us on social media because they don't know all these facts.
Ma'am.
They just think we don't want affordable housing. But I'm going to tell you, I want affordable housing, and I would like to be on a committee to have that done, and done correctly in the city of Geneva. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. God bless you for everything you do.
All right, thank you very much.
The commission now recognizes Chris Bonner. Chris, go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know who this question is. I don't know who this question goes to because I'm not privy to planning and zoning. I was out of town for the last meeting, so I was unable to join, but I know this came up. But anyways, I was driving around last week on the 20th, and I noticed that there was traffic study equipment put up on the corners of Lewis, whatever streets, right in the area of where this property is going in. So when this meeting first kicked off about 40 minutes ago, whoever was doing the minutes and going over the agenda, I think mentioned 3 or 4 times that we're still in a pandemic and there's still a state stay-at-home order. So I, for the life of me, I can't understand why a traffic study is being conducted during a pandemic. Makes zero sense to me. And I think my neighbors feel the same. And I think anybody who would kind of look at the situation and know what's being proposed to be built would kind of wonder the same. So frankly, I guess my question is whether whoever it goes to, whether it's Tracy or the city, why wouldn't a traffic study, a proper traffic study, be done when the stay-at-home order is lifted and we're out of this pandemic? That seems the most sensible, and it's pretty disheartening that like I said, I'm not privy to legality, but I would assume that someone from the city would note that before the Manning Foundation would even spend money to have a pointless study done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so everybody else that's in the queue has already spoken on this matter, so we're not going to take the testimony. We're waiting for anyone who has not testified already on this matter from the first meeting on January 14th. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand on the application and you will be recognized. Okay, I'm going to wait a little bit. I've been told no one is in the queue, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer. If anyone that's attending this meeting right now wishes to speak that have not already spoken to the commission on this matter, please raise your hand so you will be recognized.
The commission now recognizes Amy Mayer. Amy, please go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony. Amy, there we go.
My name is Amy Mayer. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you give us your address, please?
I wasn't sure if I was going to speak. 2026 Wellington Court.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't going to speak tonight because I wrote a letter, but I thought that, I should address what I think is the issue with the offset of the lanes. I'm an architect and I work on developments similar to this. The 2 streets that their center lines aren't aligned are not going to be high traffic streets. The court that faces Emma's Landing or Emma's Way is just serving 25 units. So I can't imagine that should be a high priority for you all to disprove this development. I think it's a great development. I've reviewed the plans thoroughly. I'm very pleased with how the unit look. I think the people going to move in here are going to be very happy with the homes that are being created. I hope that you will grant the exceptions and variances. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter, please raise your hand on the application and you will be recognized. Again, if anyone who has not already spoken to us in the past, either this evening or on our first meeting on January 14th, please raise your hand so you can be recognized. Okay?
The commission now recognizes Karen Fitzsimmons. Karen, go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, my name is Mark Alexander. I'm using Karen's phone. She spoke last time. I can't get in through my phone, so I hope this is okay that I can use the
Sure,
phone and
that's fine.
just
Who
make a
are
couple
you?
comments.
Who are you and what your address, please?
My name's Mark Alexander, and I live in Sterling Manor. I live on Peterson Court. And I want to echo the sentiments of a lot of the folks that spoke at the first meeting and at the second meeting. I think the overwhelming majority of people that have spoken, and I don't know what's come in online, but I'm talking about the residents that live in the neighborhood, in the area, is definitely in opposition to this from a density perspective, a traffic perspective, various perspectives. It feels like we're trying to throw as many people as we can into a little, area here on the far west side of town, with giving them no ability to be able to walk and get to anywhere easily. The other thing I want to address, and I think I don't want to be repetitive about the issues, but I do want to bring something up that bothered me the last time we had the meeting. There was a comment made that a few times by the development that this would be a Geneva. This would be for Geneva residents, for people that live in Geneva. They need the opportunity to have some place to live, and they work in Geneva and they need good housing here. And I think that is an extremely misleading statement. There is no way that that can be accomplished, and we can limit that with the way this property has been approved for the affordable housing. That would be against the law. So I think that was an extremely misleading statement as to the use of this property and as to the type of residents that would be there. And I also think that it was very misleading to say that, well, it can only be 10 students now versus 100. I mean, that's, I don't understand how we're coming up with that. We cannot limit, there's no ability to limit the type of people or the type of individuals, where they're coming from to this property. We would obviously like Geneva residents to be able to, or people that are renting in Geneva and working in Geneva, to be able to have access to this property. But if there are already lists out there that are being collected of individuals that are, looking for affordable housing, I would be concerned of whether any Geneva residents will, they're currently living or working in Geneva, will even have opportunity to live there. And I think as people that live in the area, we live in the community here, we live right in the neighborhood, I think that you need to weigh the fact that clearly from these two meetings that most of the residents that live in this area are affected, not those that are calling from the east side of town or outside of town that are for the property. Most of us are against the property. And I'll tell you, you have to take into account that it has been bad on the transparency. So I will echo the sentiments of various people that have said that. I know that's not a planning and zoning issue, but it is a community issue. And this is our community. And the way that this property was zoned, the way that it was rezoned, the way that these meetings have gone, and the fact that this is COVID, and it's a challenge, and it's not the committee's fault, but it's difficult to conduct this properly with being able to get answers to questions and to be able to follow up with questions to those answers. So I just think that, we need to take all of that into consideration, because we have to sit here and live here in this community, and we want things to be successful, and we do want affordable housing in Geneva. I think the main thing is we need to think about this property, and I think this all started off on the wrong foot with not getting the community involved in being represented in this property, so we can come to some kind of agreement beforehand. And so now you see what's transpired since, and the nonsense that's gone on with the relationships and the backdoor deals is just, as a Geneva resident, I am disgusted with it, to be honest, very disgusted. And if this goes through in its current form, the way it is shoved through this zoning commission and gets shoved through other committees without taking that into consideration, that the residents here are affected, then I am not going to be a happy person at all. And you're going to be hearing a lot from me in the future. Because this is not acceptable. This is not why we moved to Geneva and been here, longtime residents here. We are a community. We want to be successful. We're not setting these people up for success. And there have been so many misrepresentations made. And so that's what I wanted to make sure I went on the record with. So appreciate the time.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, again, we're looking for testimony, new testimony, people that have not spoken on this matter before the commission at this time. If you're attending and you wish to speak, please raise your hand on the application so you can be recognized. Okay. Okay, I've been told there's no new people on the roster or in the queue that haven't already spoken on this matter. So I'm going to ask one more time. Anyone that's currently attending the meeting that wishes to speak on this that have not previously spoken to the commission on this matter, please raise your hand on the application so you can be recognized.
The commission now recognizes Jill Nipper. Jill, go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Jill, are you there?
They're not muted. So,
Jill, if you're there, please speak. It doesn't show that you're muted, so that means we can hear you. If you are trying to send something, please let us know. Okay, apparently you're not online, so we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you perfectly. So please state your name, your full name, and your address, please.
nope.
Wait a second, I can hear.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us?
Oh, I can't.
We can hear you.
Computer audio, let's try.
We're going to send you a text message
Hello?
because obviously you can't hear us. We can't hear you. So hopefully you get the text message on the application and just you can begin your testimony. You just need to.
Okay, I'm unable to hear you guys. I live directly across the street from Heritage Court, live on Heritage Court directly across from Emma's Landing. And I just wanted to voice my objection to the current plan of Emma's Landing. I believe that the development is too large for the small parcel of land with the number of units and cars that are proposed for it. First of all, I am worried about the water runoff because in the spring, my sump pump is constantly running. And there are so many problems that we have with the current retention ponds and the runoff ditches when it comes to the rain season. Just this last spring, there was water running over Lewis Road, northwest of the intersection of Lewis and Caneville Road from the retention pond that is located on the north side of Lewis Road in Sterling Manor. At the same time, water was overflowing from different retention pond at Sterling Manor on the north side of Caneville Road, west of Lewis Road. And water and snow and ice also collects every time it rains or snows in the northeast corner of the intersection of Lewis and Caneville Road. Not to mention the numerous times that the fields east of the Geneva Fire Department on Far Avenue flood. And I believe that this parcel will cause more water problems in our neighborhood. And as far as the traffic goes, I know that, you guys have done traffic studies and things, and people have said about the pandemic, it's not going to give a true reflection of the traffic that is generated with 45 units in 2-car garages. That's a minimum of 90 cars. And in years past, my husband had a stroke and would often try to walk across the street from Heritage Court to the other side, to the northeast side of the sidewalk on Lewis. And he had a hard time. There would not be a week that would go by that he would say, someone almost hit me again, when he was just trying to cross the street with the dog. And I believe that, we don't have that traffic right now because of COVID, but when everything is up and back to what we normally are used to, you're going to have people going to and from work. You'll have schools, the buses, parents taking their kids to school. You'll have parents taking their kids to activities and things also. And so at this time, the way that the development is proposed, I oppose it. So that is all I want to say, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure you can hear me, but thanks.
The commission now recognizes Steve Hernandez. Steve, go ahead and unmute yourself and then proceed with your testimony. Steve, I believe you are self-muted. Steve Hernandez?
Steve, if you're there, please unmute yourself and state your name and address and begin your testimony.
There we go. Steve? You
Yeah,
were
hi,
unmuted.
guys.
There we go.
There you are.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. My name's Steve Hernandez, live at 2887 Old Mill Court in Geneva. I think my name's been going around a little bit, but all I wanted to make a statement is that as the president of the Sterling Manor Townhome Community, there have been some statements made about maintenance, about the water runoff. I have not had anybody reach out to us that I know of. So I'm just making myself available to the commission at this time. If you have any questions for us, I've spoken to the property manager. No one has reached out to the property management office about the parcel land that we own. I did hear some comments that we do not maintain that pond that butts up against the property in question, and that's not correct. We do maintain that pond. We would be happy to provide the statements and invoices of the maintenance that we provide in that pond, and that still tends to be an issue in the spring, as some of the residents have mentioned. So we do our best to maintain that area, and at this time, I'm opening the floor to you guys in case you have questions for us as the association, because it seems like a lot of comments have been made and a lot of untrue facts have been mentioned. So I just wanted to open that floor up to you guys and see if you guys had questions.
Okay, once we get to that section, we'll definitely reach out to you if that's something that comes up that the commission would wish to speak further on, but right now we want to just continue to take on testimony.
Okay, I just wanted you guys to know I've had issues connecting in the past to some of your meetings, so this is the first time I've been able to connect. So I will stay on the line.
We appreciate it. Thanks for offering. I appreciate it. Okay, again, anyone who has not currently or has not spoken to the commission about this previously in our first meeting on the 14th or this evening that's attending this session, please raise your hand so that you can be recognized to speak.
The commission now recognizes Martha Patchke. Martha, please go ahead and unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony. She did.
Am I still muted?
Hi, Martha.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, perfect. I'll be very, very quick. I just wanted to express my support for this development, and I hope that you will grant the minor variances being requested. I know there's been some complaints about lack of transparency. I myself wanted to learn more about the Burton Foundation when I first learned about this development. I reached out and was lucky to, was very fortunate to have gotten to tour two of their facilities, two of their developments in South Elgin, and I was really impressed with them. So I hope that anybody on the Planning and Zoning Commission who has had questions of their own has taken the time to do likewise and tour their developments. They're very high quality, and I can tell that the residents who live there enjoy them and take care of them. So just want to speak to that experience and demonstrate my support for this development. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter that have not testified in front of the commission previously that's attending this session, please raise your hand so that you can be recognized and give your testimony. Okay. Doesn't look like there's anyone in the queue, so I'm going to give it one last run. Anyone wishing to give testimony that has not previously spoken to the commission in this evening or in our meeting on January 14th, please raise your hand so that you may be recognized to speak. Okay. All right, so I think we've gone through everyone wishing to speak on the matter. There is no one else in the queue, so we're going to move on to the second stage of this process, which is the applicant to be given a chance to respond to the extensive testimony that we have received to date. So, Tracy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, for having this meeting tonight. I was going to kind of go over the questions with the answers given from the 14th meeting, but given tonight, there seems to be a lot of things being said that maybe the homework wasn't done as much as it could have been. I'm not quite sure what the bike path is about. We have no plans for a bike path within our constraints of the development. So that might be around the bike path, and that would be a city issue. Centerville Courts, that's in East St. Louis, Centerville, Illinois. And Centerville Courts was a development that I inherited. It was completed in 1992, 93. I've been here 10 years. I inherited a lot of those developments. And we did try to, it needs some physical improvements, and interior could do some updating. We've tried twice for applications for financing. We did get denied twice. So we're looking at other avenues to try to rehab some of the interiors, lease them up, and stabilize the property. There are some units that need to be put back online. There was a comment about donations of land prior to our submission to IDA. So we do have a two-phased process in the financing of these types of developments. In the PPA process, we were asking for the donation. That conversation was going back and forth between us and the city of Geneva. We did submit our preliminary application. We got approved, and then we go into the full application process. It's a two-staged process. It's several months apart. Given that the donation didn't seem realistic, we had to restructure our financing to purchase the property. We were able to do that for the city parcel, and therefore we asked to purchase the property of which you approved. The Nelson parcel, you know, I guess a lot of us have been doing something a really long time. There's dentists out there in Geneva, there's developers. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've made a lot of good friends around the country. And Iceberg Development you brought up, he's a very good friend of the foundation. He's been very good to us over the 20 years. And he did offer to purchase and donate. It's not illegal. There's nothing wrong with that. We have good friends, and fortunately they have money and we don't. Door Creek Construction, just like I am an employee of the Burton Foundation, I don't own this company. My husband is a staff person for Door Creek. He does not own it. He does not get any fees. He gets a paycheck just like I do for doing the work. We have participated in developments where Door Creek has built those buildings, or we've participated with other contractors. So I'm not quite sure where they came from, but that is the answer. And I was asked, shouldn't Ida know? They do. They do know he works for a general contractor. I wouldn't be able to keep my lies straight if I wasn't transparent. If you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it transparently. So that was nothing that I hid. I didn't think it was even important. There's things going on in Geneva that I don't know. I don't understand them, but it is what it is. The family units being marketed, there was a question about marketing these units. Yes, they're being marketed non-age restricted. Anybody can live there. So that's the question is yes, anyone can live at that development. Up to the 60%, yes, we have 60% or below area median income, and then we have the 61 to 80% area median income. These folks have to pay their rent. There's no rental assistance for the development. And that's the whole 60%, 80% question. Supportive housing units, these are in now market rate. There's cities that touch your city where developers have to add a percent of affordable component to the units, and a lot of them do have supportive housing. Supportive housing is job training, case management, budgeting, and yes, we do have those in all of our buildings. We third party, we work with an agency that supports those folks that live in our communities that need the job training, case management, budgeting services, whatever it may be. So yes, we do have them, and we do not manage that ourselves. That's not our skill set. The traffic study, it was done again. We did complete it. Tonight, Justin is on with us, and he completed the traffic study. And we did do one. We did a summary, then we did an update. Now we've done a full report. And they're saying stop till we can do a full report when everything is up and running again. Other cities, towns, and villages are performing and building new buildings and having zoning meetings and approving things. So if stopping any development in Geneva because of the traffic study, then that's going to take us till probably 2022. We did complete one. Justin's on the phone to answer any questions. I'm not quite sure where any backroom negotiations, I don't know what that means. I emailed city, they invited us to come and meet, we sat, we talked. There was nothing that was hidden about it. We were all sitting in the conference room. So I'm not quite sure where that came from. So those are answers for tonight. My screen moved. I do have answers if you'd like for me to read from last zoning meeting, the answers to the questions that were posed.
You can proceed however you wish. I mean, you're the applicant. You can respond to the questions however you see fit.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. So tonight we do have David Reindow, our civil engineer, Lane Allen, our architect, and Justin Opitz, who is the traffic planner. And he's the one who completed the study that was submitted today for the public hearing. The questions that were asked from the 14th meeting, I put into two categories. I know you had identified 3 categories. I did put them into 2. One is zoning related, civil engineering, architectural, site plan. There was a question about foundation supports. The units are all slab on grade with 3-foot 6 deep footings, all structural and are per local and international code. There's no basements required. There was a question about basements. Site concerns regarding the drainage, we heard that again tonight. In the existing conditions, about 90% of the site currently drains from east to west into an existing storm water retention pond. The proposed development will maintain this drainage direction and provide an additional detention area that will capture the runoff and will release at a much lower rate than the existing conditions. The remaining 10% of the site drains south onto the Nelson's parcel, and the site engineer is working with the city's stormwater engineer, WBK, on alternatives to also detain and release this area in its existing conditions direction. Screen buffer on the rear of the buildings from Lewis Road. We considered the current land plan as proposed provides sufficient screening buffering from Lewis Road. The existing adjacent lot to the south, lot owned by Sterling Manor HOA, provides 125-foot buffer and a 200-foot distance to the closest backyard. Also, the change in elevation of the proposed grading plan above Lewis Road will also act as a line of sight buffer. The HOA considers this inadequate. We can provide an additional 4-foot screen berm just south of the development on the 30-foot landscape easement provided by the HOA. Use of fire lane and controlling the use of. No gates for the fire department. Like other developments, we can post signs for folks to follow, but we cannot control that no one uses that access road. Folks are going to walk on it. We can't stop that. Sprinkling the units came up. Sprinkling is not required for the building and fire department given a fire lane was made a part of the site plan. The building code does not require sprinkling of townhomes or single family homes. The development will comply with all city codes. We get a geotechnical report when it's finished. We don't provide our third-party reports to the general public. Of note, though, the report came back with no serious issues related to soils or the ability to build at the site. The traffic study discussion about it being over the last year when COVID and schools were not in. We did complete another one recently, just the other day, and submitted this for the public hearing. This report concludes that the proposed development is expected to generate 22 to 29 trips combined inbound and outbound during the weekday AM and PM hours. The overall delay increase as a result of the proposed development at each of the study area intersections is below 3 seconds, with most study area intersections experience less than 1 second delay increase. As such, the development is anticipated to have minimal effect on the operations of the area roadway network. And based on the parking analysis, it can be concluded that the site provides adequate supply to accommodate the anticipated resident and visitor parking demands of the proposed development. There are too many units for this site. The development is consistent with the parameters set by the city of 50 units being a 45-unit development. This development is all siding. This development has LP Smart Site siding, has a 50-year prorated product warranty and a 30-year paint warranty. There is also stone veneer on the front entry areas of the buildings. Those were the zoning questions that I wrote down. Non-related zoning questions. Why did we pick Door Creek Construction? Door Creek Construction has significant experience with quality housing throughout Illinois and other states. They built several of our buildings, as was mentioned before, including Windmill Manor in Batavia. They are right now building the Landings, which is right behind the Walmart on Randall Road. They're very skilled, there's a lot of them, and they do a very good job. How will applications be selected? This is not a zoning related issue. However, in the spirit of openness and transparency, I will answer. We select applicants through a criteria set on an approved tenant selection plan. The tenant selection plan details financial and other criteria we're allowed to accept or reject prospective tenants. I need to get a drink, sorry. How can we keep a low number of children in the complex? This is not a zoning related issue. However, I will answer it. You may not be aware of it, it is illegal to discriminate against households with children, and we do abide by all fair housing rules at all times. We will follow the municipality ordinance, occupancy ordinance in Geneva as well. On-site manager. This is not a zoning related issue, but I will answer. The hours are anticipated to be 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Development includes an on-site property management office, and the property manager will work out of that office. Screening the residents. This is not a zoning related issue, but I will answer. All residents will be screened and background checks will be made and credit and criminal. So complete backgrounds will be completed on every person that applies to live in the building. How can we guarantee that residents are from Geneva? My goal for this development several years ago was to have folks that work in Geneva and may live in Geneva. They may be living with parents that want to go out and get their own apartment. The goal was that. However, we can't check everyone's ID and make sure they're a citizen of Geneva. That is not the point that I made before. The goal was to promote these developments for people that work in all of your retail, the hospitals, everywhere, to give them a place to live if they don't already live in Geneva. We'll market the development strongly to Geneva and hope that many existing residents, employees of Geneva want to live at Emma's Landing. We will have an affirmative marketing plan that does include marketing to residents and employees of Geneva. What happens if a resident goes over their income? This is section 42 of the IRS code. This is the vehicle that I use and all developers use for affordable housing to get them financed. And one of the rules is if you go over 60% of your area median income and your income goes up, when you first qualified, a year later you get an increase, you would move to the 80% bracket if it's above 80%. But no one will ever have to leave unless they choose to leave. Just because they can win the lotto a year later. They don't have to leave if they don't want to. So the program does not, isn't negative toward people doing better for themselves. What will staffing be like for the community? It's a not zoning related issue, but I'll answer it. The property has sufficient funds for a property manager and a maintenance staff. Their hours would be based on the needed time at the property, probably 9 to 4:30 for the property manager and more part-time for the maintenance man, because him being there 100% of the time probably would be a waste of their time. So it would be a half-time or three-quarter time maintenance and a full-time manager. And they will work out of the community office. How are the handicapped units leased? If a unit gets leased on a non-handicapped resident, what happens if one applies for the handicap unit? It's not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. Accessible units are first leased to households that need the accessible features in the unit. If at the end of the lease up of the development, an accessible unit is leased to a resident that does not require the accessible features, the resident at the initial lease signing signs an addendum that acknowledges that this is an accessible unit. The addendum states that should a person later apply for the accessible unit, the original tenant agrees to move to the next available unit to allow the person needing the accessible features to occupy their existing unit. The resident will not be forced to move. Should there not be any other available unit to transfer to, they will be allowed to remain in the unit until another comparable unit is available. TBF has been a no-show at meetings. I am not aware, it's not TBF, it was just me. I am not aware of any invitations to meetings that I haven't attended. We've been invited to attend all requested meetings, which have to date been with the city. We did meet with the president, or I did meet with the president of the Homeowners Association once, and then again with 2 board members of the Sterling Townhome HOA. One was physically in the room, and one was on the video chat. Those were that was when I was invited to, and I'd be glad to come to any if somebody wants to talk to me. Please provide us with an example lease that will be used along with the addendums. This is not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. All leases comply with fair housing, state of Illinois, IDA, and all the lender regulations. If you would like, when we're leasing, you can come and get an application. You can see the lease, but it's standard. It has all the same language as any other market rate, but more. Do you have a wait list? This is not a zoning issue, but I'll answer. We do have a wait list, and the development will maintain a wait list pursuant to the tenant selection plan that we get when we first start the property. We have a demand for seniors. Why can't we start over and build senior housing at this site? The site is ideal for non-age restricted households. It is close to schools, a townhome development across the street, and fits well within that community. What is the leasing process? This is not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. We follow the affirmative fair housing marketing plan and will advertise in local papers that will include when we are accepting application. The site manager will accept a pre-application card and will follow all fair housing guidelines in accepting applications. Leasing will consist of qualifying applications based on income eligibility and completion of background checks. We have to allow Section 8, and I added housing choice vouchers because that's what they were referring to. This is not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. The development will abide by fair housing, which includes not discriminating against a household based on their source of income to pay the rent. If a tenant is qualified and has a housing choice voucher to cover a portion of their rent, they will be screened the same as any other potential resident. What is the process for lease renewals? How long is the lease term? This is not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. Lease renewals are completed annually, and the leases are signed for 1-year increments. Real estate taxes. The development will pay real estate taxes. All of our developments pay real estate taxes. How does the applicant decide the unit mix and the AMI in the building? This is not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. We determined that broad mix of incomes would be best to serve the market demand and the long-term financial feasibility for the development. So a range up to the 80% AMI. Is there supportive housing in this development? This is not a zoning related issue. 7 of the units are being targeted to households who will benefit from social services. Social service organizations are responsible to refer households and provide support for them and as needed. How do you handle a resident who breaks a lease or any of the addendums or riders? This is not a zoning issue, but I will answer. Residents that don't follow housing rules are either provided warnings, assessed fines, not offered lease renewals, or evicted based on the severity of the issue. Safety and police calls in Sterling and Rock Falls. It's not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. The Burton Foundation, just like Centerville Courts, acquired these 2 developments with another developer. The Burton Foundation is a minority, non-managing member of these developments, and we don't have any control over the day-to-day management or operations for either community. Also, Vantage is not the property management company on these developments. The developments that the foundation is the majority owner and manages, and Vantage managers do not have these issues. If we are aware of any issues at the property management level for my buildings that I developed, they bring it to me and we deal with it right away, which doesn't happen very often. Property values will reduce if the development is built. I submitted the township assessor's assessments for the two developments here in South Elgin. And it shows a substantial increase in assessments pre-construction of Water's Edge in 2014 and post-construction of Water's Edge in 2016. Also included in the study show that there is no direct correlation between affordable housing built in the neighborhoods and a reduction in the home value in those same neighborhoods. And I submitted that study as well. An employee in Geneva is either a staff person or a board member of TBF. I would know this since I do the hiring, and there are no employees, board members, anyone related to the city of Geneva that is an employee, a board member of the Burton Foundation. Will there be a crime-free addendum for the resident? Not a rezoning related issue, but yes, there is a crime-free addendum for each resident. Affordable homes, not apartments, should be built in Geneva. Thank you for this comment. We agree that affordable housing should be in all types of structures, apartment buildings, townhomes. Here, low and moderate income households will be afforded the same type of homes as their own neighbors. As you may know, renters that are welcomed into their community are just as vested in maintaining a vibrant, safe community as our homeowners. We regulate how many cars a resident has within their family. This is not a zoning related issue, however, I'll answer. We are not aware of the neighboring communities limiting the number of cars a family owns. Emma's Landing will have similar standards as market rate communities. How is the property manager trained? Not a zoning related issue. The management company trains their staff to their standards. IDA is funding this development. This is not a zoning related issue, but I'll answer. To clarify, IDA is not providing a loan for this development. IDA provided an allocation of federal tax credits which was sold or will be sold to a private investor. The funds coming into this development are all private. Green Initiative. When we were speaking last time, I mentioned enterprise green communities, and that's for this development. We have a list of green initiatives with the design of the development that will meet or exceed the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code. The development's impact on schools. I did submit a document for this meeting tonight. The IllinoisReportCard.com shows that schools in Geneva average class size after 2016 is at or below the average for the district and the state. The number of children expected to live in this community will not present a burden on the schools in Geneva. And my final thought, affordability is not a zoning requirement. The developer of affordable housing goes through the same zoning process as a market rate developer. The housing we develop costs the same as market rate developments. We have the same third-party consultants as market rate developers, and we pay real estate just like market rate developers. Our management standards are high because we need to show cities, towns, and villages that affordable housing does not mean lower standards. From day one, we followed the direction of the city staff and zoning, in particular, the building type and desired density for this area. Thank you.
Tracy, this is Chairman Stocking. Are any of your professionals want to testify this evening? I know you have the traffic consultant, for instance, attending, or on civil engineering. I'm just going to ask you if you would wish to have them present anything at this time.
If Justin would like to clarify, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Opitz. I'm with Gaywalt Hamilton Associates. We were responsible for the traffic study. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're actually doing the traffic study right now. So we set up cameras last week and took traffic counts on Thursday, which was fortunately one of the nicer days within winter. And when we're talking about traffic studies now, there's a lot of historical data that IDOT collects, the Illinois Department of Transportation. All of this data is publicly available. Unfortunately, a lot of the streets around this development, like Peck Road, Caneville, Randall, they all had these historical counts conducted on them. So we're able to compare the counts that we took last Thursday in 2021 to the pre-pandemic 2018 data that IDOT collects. And then we can kind of see the difference and basically adjust accordingly. And generally, we only adjust up if the current numbers are down. And in this industry, we've been calling this a COVID factor. And this is basically as close as we could possibly get to pre-pandemic normal right now. So during the morning peak hour, for instance, Randall Road volumes are down about 25%, so we bumped those up for this study. Peck Road volumes are down about 5%, so we bumped those up for this study. The remaining roadways were actually producing higher volumes and pre-pandemic volumes, so we kept those volumes higher. And then during the evening peak hour, as a network, the entire network around this development was experiencing about a 20% decreased volumes over pre-pandemic levels. So we bumped all the volumes up for the evening peak hours. So in terms of why we're doing this, we're still very, very close to testing pre-pandemic normal in terms of impact on the roadway network. And when we're testing with these new numbers, the development still has a low impact on the adjacent roadway network.
Okay. Thank you. Tracy, this is Chairman Stocking. Anything else you need to present at this time? If not, I'll open it up to the commissioners for questions.
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay. All right, guys. It's time for questions. So anyone wishing to be recognized, please give me the high sign and I'll recognize you. Yes, Commissioner Rittenhouse.
Hey, Justin, this is for you. I'm a little confused on the report of combined 20 in and out. Can you explain that a little bit better? Because in just based on history, Justin, I don't know if this is something you would know or not, but 45 units, would that constitute one vehicle or 1.5 vehicles? Can you walk us through that? I'm a little confused on that one.
Sure. So when we're talking about the trips during the morning and evening peak hours, those are the trips that happen over that 1 hour period in the morning or afternoon. So for the morning, we have 22 trips that come into and out of the development. So just for sake of ease of explanation, that would be 10 people who went to get coffee and came home, or 10 people who were leaving to go to work. So that's kind of how that works. And the way it's broken down is we use what's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. This is a national database that is maintained by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and they've collected data since, I'm not sure which year, it's pretty far back, on trip generation rates of developments of all types. So multifamily housing, single family housing, commercial, industrial, all types. And basically what they've done is aggregated this data and they update it, as we move into the future. And we can look at this manual and say it's reasonable to assume that a development of this size located within, either a suburban or urban, that's how they designate it, is going to generate this many trips. So that's a national source that we use. It's pretty standard within the transportation industry. It's used all over Illinois, Chicago. And then in terms of how many cars would be present per unit, it would be anywhere between 1 to 2, possibly more, possibly less. I couldn't exactly answer that for you.
So let's just say on the low side, it's 1 per unit, 45. And based on your manual, you guys are saying only 10 out of 45 are leaving and coming back within an hour that morning, and 10 are going out and coming in the evening when you do that. I have a hard time trying to grasp those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that is what the manual says. That would be what is the standard for this type of development. I would say that, we're looking at just 1 hour within the morning. So a lot of people might leave for work at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. So, over all of the morning peak hours, it's going to be higher than 20, but we're looking at the one that is going to impact the surrounding network when it is the most busy.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Sivka.
Yes, for Justin while we're on the topic, but just to clarify, from the first study you did to the study that you then did and we received today, there was very little change on the impact. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so today's study, it either meets or exceeds the pre-pandemic traffic volumes.
Yes, it is. I would say it meets them. It's still, when we're talking about projections into the future, they are projections, but, we're as close as we could possibly get to testing pre-pandemic normal with this methodology.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Holman.
I just have a question about, people have mentioned comments about that road not being safe to cross from Lewis, crossing over Caneville. And I was wondering if there was anything that was written in the plan about creating blinking lights or, some sort of a crosswalk situation that could alleviate some of that concern.
Well, I don't know, maybe that'd be city staff, I don't know. If that was even a consideration of the engineering at that site. I mean, that's probably something the city would institute.
This is Dave DeGroot. There's not a plan from the city's perspective, and that was not contemplated with this development.
Yes, Commissioner Mead.
Staying on traffic for just a minute and back to Justin. I personally was comfortable with the conclusions made in both traffic studies. I just wanted to make sure I understood one thing. You used 2018 as the base, which is pre-pandemic, and then an extrapolation to 2026 to show growth. And my understanding is that factors in anticipated land development over that time as well. So not only do you have static growth from existing residents and existing businesses, but additional development that generates additional traffic. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then where I found myself thinking is that because we're in this pandemic, I believe we've seen a slowdown of development and of some growth. So if anything, the 2026 projections are arguably conservative because there's been some stalling or at least some slowdown of land development during this, 10 or 12 months of pandemic.
Yeah, we try to take the conservative analysis scenario at every step of the way, just to make sure we're testing the maximum impact.
Okay, that's the way I thought you guys had looked at it, and I was comfortable with that. So.
Yes, Adam.
Thank you. Just a couple questions for Tracy. Just circling back on Vantage. Is Vantage based in Quincy, Illinois?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I'm sorry?
I wasn't sure if you could hear me.
Oh, yes, I could hear you. Just in trying to do my due diligence on Vantage, in Googling them, their Google business account shows that that office in Quincy is permanently closed. Any type of searching for a website for Vantage is non-existent.
Right. They
And
actually,
then recent, I'm sorry, go ahead.
they are
I'm sorry.
creating a website. They are
Oh,
working
okay.
on a website.
Okay. And then with respect to looking them up on IDFPR, the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, their licensing lapsed in 2018. There is no licensed employees listed on IDFPR. So I guess if you could kind of explain their structure, who's running the business. A search on LinkedIn only found one employee and he's based in Colorado.
Yeah,
So I
that's
guess
the
I just
owner,
wanted to kind of give some more sense.
That's the owner,
So
Mike
if you could kind
Ross.
of give me a little more sense for the supervision that this on-site manager would have. Do they have anybody local that's going to be training them, overseeing that they're enforcing the regulations and policies within the community?
Yes, so the vice president of Vantage actually goes to the sites when they're getting ready to lease up, and she actually stays through the lease up period until it starts leasing. So training is done with Barb, who's been with Vantage for, I don't know, 17 years or something.
Any idea if they plan on being in compliance? Because my understanding is if you're a third-party property management firm managing for a specific client, you do require to be licensed. You need to have a managing broker on staff within the state.
And that's Mike Ross.
So if you could kind of touch.
Yeah, that's Mike Ross. He is the broker of the firm. So, but I'll ask and get back to you on that because they are managing currently many buildings.
Okay.
But I'll get back.
And then I guess just some, thank you for that. And just some questions, I guess, for staff. Obviously, I realize that might be a state law in requiring to have somebody that's licensed and to have them licensed as a management company. Do we have anything that we could do to confirm, make sure that they are using this licensed management company? And it might be a question for Mr. Sandbeck.
The answer to that is yes. So what we can do is make certain that all state requirements associated with this project are to guidance and requirements. And so we'll go back to the developer should this plan progress and make sure as a condition for the zoning variations, again, if passed, that those be, that all licensing be brought up to standards and be proved up essentially.
Thank you. And then one other question for staff. In regards to the GEO reports, I understand that that's not something that they are required to put forth and make public, but I'm assuming that staff has reviewed all of those studies and making sure that the land is clean and, you know, all of these studies are in compliance.
Yes, the city has received a copy of the land use opinion report that was filed with the DuPage Kane County Soil Water Conservation District and reviewed that. And the development plans have been reviewed in detail, and the grading plans have been reviewed in detail by our Public Works Department, city engineer, and our stormwater consultant.
Thank you very much. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Evans.
Last meeting, one of the residents brought up a question about an environmental issue, a wildlife issue with some nesting cranes. Are there environmental issues with the site or wildlife issues, and how are they being addressed?
I guess we'd ask the applicant to answer first because they're the primary person. But it might also, but Tracy, do you have any comments on that?
We don't have any plan for the wildlife. I know that they were said that there were cranes there. I'm assuming they were over across the street too before that development. They might have moved to this property.
All right, thank you.
We have in the past completed like a species report with University of Illinois in the past, but we haven't had really many issues with that.
From the city's perspective, is there anything special about this site? Is it a significant habitat that needs to be protected in some way?
Not that I'm aware of. I know we heard the testimony as well that there were sandhill cranes that were on the site. I don't know if they nest on the site or visit the site. We do have Greg Chismark with WBK with us this evening, and Brian Scheiber, our city engineer. I don't know if there's anything you guys would like to add.
This is Brian Scheiber. I'm certainly not aware of any nesting cranes in that area. We haven't been notified of anything like that.
This is Greg Chismark with WBK. The only other thing that could be done is endangered species consultation with DNR to determine if there are endangered species within the site. And that can be handled through the final stormwater permit. That would typically be done in that manner. And if something turns up, then that would be handled with the final engineering process.
So there will be routinely an investigation of whether or not there's something that needs to be addressed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Rittenhouse.
I'm not sure if this is a question for staff or for Tracy, but can someone explain to me where the whole number of kids issue came in? I know there was a lot of back and forth with local residents that, you know, there was 100 kids, now there's 10 kids. The city, I read somewhere where the city accidentally put 100, it should have been 10.
Yes, I could speak to that, John. Initially, we did post on the Just the Facts page that the project was expected to generate 100 students. If you look at the land cash sheet that's included in your packets, I believe it was the last page of the January 14th packet, you'll see that that sheet includes multipliers and expected numbers for both student populations and total population. And the total population there is shown at like 99.9, and that's where that 100 number came from. It was incorrectly grabbed as the total number of students instead of the total population. So if you look at the totals for the student population, those add up to 10 students. So as soon as that mistake was identified, it was corrected, and the webpage was revised.
Okay, so David, the ratio is 10 children to 99 at capacity.
Yes, out of the expected population of 100 people, it's expected that 10 would be students.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Mead.
Just following up on John's comment there, I think it's important to clarify. I don't think that means that there's just going to be 10 children in this property. there's anticipated to be 10 children that use the school district. There's going to be toddlers and infants and maybe even children that are out post high school or, still living at home or something. So it's not, there could be 20 kids or 30 kids in this development, but only 10 are using the school system at a particular point in time. I think that's correct.
So, all right, so we can continue to ask questions of the applicant, city staff, or the public. If there's any follow-up questions you'd like to ask the public that came in on the testimony, clarifications, that kind of thing, this would be the time to roll on that. Yes, Commissioner Meade.
I do have one clarification, and I was taking some pretty laborious notes last time and this time, so I have a few things written down, but one of them, to your point, is a reply to one of the public comments from last time. I think it was Mr. Martin Automanelli that referenced both Tracy Manning and myself referring to residents will live and work in Geneva. And my comment on that is just, it was related to prospective residents living and working in Geneva. I would never intended, I don't think Ms. Manning did either, to imply that there was going to be a requirement that any resident was from Geneva. I was merely articulating that the property will provide an alternative for folks living in Geneva and in the Fox Valley to live closer to where they work. I think over time, you'll probably see a trend that where a meaningful portion of the population at Emma's Landing both lives and works in Geneva or more particularly in the Fox Valley, the Tri-Cities. So he particularly mentioned that I had articulated that it was never intended to imply any kind of requirement. It was just that I think that's what we'll see over time. And it's already been stated, you can't require that anyway, that someone come from a certain city or certain zip code to live in your property. So just thought I'd clarify that.
Right, I would agree with that, and I would also add on that was part of the whole idea behind the city's adoption of the affordable housing policy, right? That there is a known need in Geneva to provide affordable housing for folks who work in this community. And that's just an outshot of it. But yes, we can't,
right,
under the fair housing rules, we can't require Geneva residents to be part of this development.
Correct.
Yes, Commissioner Rittenhouse.
Tracy, my question for you is, and this is based out of not knowing the Burton model, but have you guys ever built low-income townhomes where people do purchase to own, or is your model strictly rental property?
Right now, they're all rentals. There's actually only a few models where there's rental townhomes and also market rate townhomes for rent. And then there's a combination of affordable purchasing homes and then a market rate purchasing homes. That one's in Chicago. It gets really complicated when you do that. The model's very difficult, and it's easier for us to provide housing for the folks that need it in apartments. And we are a partner in others that are townhomes, Centerville, for example. But the majority of ours are all apartments.
Can I ask the question, would the Burton Foundation ever consider doing a purchase versus a rental? Or would that be kind of you guys would pull out at that point?
Are you talking a completely different development or this development?
This development.
No, this development has to stay the way that it is for decades to come. There's a land use restriction agreement that goes with all the developments, and this would have one. This would have a LURA with it. This could never be sold for decades to come.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Commissioner Evans.
This is for Tracy. Many people brought up the need for senior housing and why couldn't this project be senior housing? Just to clarify, there's nothing to prevent seniors from renting these units, correct?
Not at all.
So it actually is open to all ages, and that would include seniors.
Absolutely.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, if the commissioners don't have any initial questions right now at this point, we can open it up to the public to comment on testimony received this evening up to this point. So there is an opportunity here to ask additional follow-on questions or clarifications on statements that were made in this evening's meeting. So this gives you an opportunity, the people that are listening in on the public, to ask additional follow-on questions, get some clarifications on something that was stated by staff, by the commissioners, or by the applicant. So we'll follow the same procedure we did on the initial testimony on the public hearing. Just please raise your hand and say you wish to speak on the application, and you will be recognized.
The commission now recognizes Cheryl Marks. Cheryl, please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Cheryl Marks. I live in LeBaron Court in Geneva and Randall Square, and I did have a couple of follow-up questions. The traffic study, my daughter's a civil engineer and she does traffic, so we studied your traffic study. I think, if I read it right, the traffic study was done in June, the one that you extrapolated off of originally. The first one that was submitted was done in June of 2018. And if anyone who's lived around here knows what it's like to try to get out of our subdivision in the mornings in June compared to October, there's probably a 60% difference. So I appreciate that you took into the COVID account and the COVID extrapolation with that, but I wonder whether or not our numbers are even accurate for the high peak of our traffic. June number, I don't think is adequate representation. I'm particularly interested in Fargo and Lewis. That goes into my second question for the number of people, because I do think the closest grocery store per se or convenience store is right there on the corner of Fargo. If they're going to be going local for sodas and pop and bread, they're going to come out to that convenience store, and that's the place where the traffic really backs up the most. I live in a court that has 6 houses. Most of them are 3 bedrooms, which I know you have plenty of in that subdivision. I've been here 30 years. We have 20 children in our court. we have 25 cars. I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around the 10 kids and the 1 car per household. I don't see how that all equates and how you're going to get only 20 trips in and out. I know what my court is like to get out of in the morning, and I know what it's like to get out on Randall and Lewis. And that's without taking into account an extra 45 units. So my question there is, did we extrapolate for, again, the time of year? And I still don't understand the numbers of how you got 10 kids, and I still don't understand the numbers of how you got 20 ins and 20 outs. It just really doesn't seem to jive with what we've physically experienced here in Geneva and in Randall Square. My last question goes back to water. I did look at the retention pond, and we're all very familiar that, and maybe you're not familiar, with the way the retention ponds drain out from the one there by Sterling Manor and then the one across the street, and then that all drains down to by the fire station, and then that goes underneath Randall Road and keeps going on out to the river. That retention pond that's supposed to be added to take the runoff that's going to be next to the existing retention pond, I'm kind of in a quandary how that's going to work. It's already at you're saying that you're going to elevate the entire subdivision, essentially. There's going to be an 8-foot rise. So that's going to flow into your new retention pond, which is then going to be higher than the current retention pond, therefore would overflow if that's going to overflow, and I'll guarantee that it's going to overflow. I heard the 7-inch oversized pipe. I don't know that that's necessarily enough to accommodate that extra water, but so what happens when that does overflow? Assume that it's going to, because we keep getting these 100-year rains and all of the retention ponds are overflowing. If that overflows then into the big retention pond that's already there, where is all that going to go? I'm just really not clear on how the 2 retention ponds next to each other are really going to manage and fix the problem. We already have a problem that needs to be fixed, and we're adding insult to injury, I think, with what's already there. And that's going to trickle down out of Sterling Manor, and it's going to trickle down then out to Randall Square and out to the fire department. And God forbid, I can't tell you how many times that already comes all the way up to the road and we can't get the fire trucks out. So it is a bigger concern, and it does kind of trickle all the way down. Along with that, my last question is the plan for the people flow. I do appreciate the fact that you have looked at what's close and within walking distance, and that's why we were able to accommodate an affordable housing unit now as compared to other years, because we do have Walmart here and we do have the grocery store down the street with Fresh Time. There's going to be a lot of foot traffic now through that whole parking lot and commercial subdivision. What's the plan for all the bikes and all the foot traffic that's going to be going to these grocery stores, and all the car traffic now that's going to be going in and out of those parking lots? And how are we going to police and supervise those? Okay, I think I've mastered all of them. If you could take note and give us some answers to those, that'd be great.
Tracy, you want to take on the traffic one first?
Yeah, I think that Justin can talk about the traffic one, and then we have David on the phone with our civil engineer.
Sure, I'll start it off with traffic. So our first report was submitted in June. We didn't actually collect any numbers or any traffic counts for that first report. So it was submitted in June, and that was it. This new report was, just submitted recently, and we collected numbers last week. We're not applying any time of day factors because we don't anticipate this development to have a big impact on any of the roadways in the area. So we don't feel that would really change the impact. And then as far as Fargo and Randall, with delay on Fargo turning onto Randall, this is pretty typical throughout the Chicagoland region when you're talking about these major arterial roadways like Randall. The way the signals are timed, it's just the nature of the beast, because Randall has to move so many cars a day that, the county has to give priority to those cars that are traveling through on Randall, that, you're going to wait a little bit longer on these side streets that turn onto the major streets. So, in terms of the impact that this development is going to have on that, it is very minimal.
And then I don't necessarily know who to direct the question on the estimated number of people in the development, number of cars. I mean, I don't know how those numbers were generated. I guess maybe a little clarity on that.
I don't think we provided an estimation for the number of cars that would be within the development. We just said that the amount of parking that's provided would meet the demand that would be generated by the units.
Okay. So the civil, on terms of the drainage. Tracy, do you have an engineer?
David should be on the phone.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to comment on the question about how our detention pond is going to be higher than the existing detention pond to the west. How is that going to help the flooding? Right now, in the existing conditions, there's about 8 acres it's just flowing right into the pond to the west. It's not being captured, it's not being held. So what we are doing is we are adding a detention pond that's higher in elevation. And it's going to capture 1.8 acre feet. And it's going to release it through a small 7-inch restrictor into the lower pond. So that, in my opinion, that's going to make a significant improvement to what you have now. Heidi submitted a photograph in her response, which was really good. Shows exactly what the pond looks like when it's full. It overflows on the sidewalk. Well, I took that sidewalk elevation and made sure that the bottom of my pond was higher than that elevation. So we would not be contributing to that flooding of that pond because we are going to be releasing at a much slower rate than what it is now.
David, in terms of the city?
Yes.
David. I'm sorry. David DeGroot, in terms of the city's review of the drainage on the city engineer and our consultant, any concerns at all with the current design?
There's not. We've confirmed that the proposed development meets the requirements of the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance. There's not currently a stormwater management system for the property. So this development provides one, as David noted, that collects the water into the pond and releases it at a slower rate into the stormwater system. The proposed peak runoff for the property would be less than the existing runoff from the site as it exists today. So it should not exacerbate any existing stormwater issues in the area. And the city recognizes that there are issues in the area. We have engaged with WBK to do a watershed study for the entire city, and that study will hope to identify ways to resolve those issues, estimates on the cost to resolve those issues, and prioritize projects throughout the city so we can use that in our budgeting in the future. But again, this site has been reviewed and complies with the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance and should not create any additional runoff.
All right. Thank you.
And again, we do have Brian Scheiber and Greg Chismark with us this evening if there's any need to elaborate on that.
Any additional questions? Okay. All right. So I think we covered everything that was on her list, I believe. So we'll take additional questions, follow-up questions of testimony or statements that were made in tonight's hearing from the public. If you wish to speak on that, please raise your hand so you can be recognized.
The commission now recognizes Lindsay McCall. Lindsay, please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So my name is Lindsay McCall. I'm located at 2732 Peterson Court. I just had a couple follow-up questions for Ms. Manning regarding the what she had responded to for the public comments. So the first would be question number one, why did we pick Door Creek Construction to build this building? As previously pointed out, Brian Fellhauer is your husband. He is the president of Door Creek Construction. So I'm still having a really hard time wrapping my mind around this, because typically when I have researched developers, contractors, architects, they have websites with client portfolios where they tend to show off what they've worked on. They brag about the projects that they're proud of. Yet there is no website for Door Creek Construction. The Better Business Bureau lists 2 locations, one in Bellendorf, Iowa, and one in South Elgin. So I'm just very confused about, you said that they have significant experience with quality housing, yet I can find no evidence of any quality housing that they've actually built, aside from what you're saying they worked on Windmill Manor. Still, I can't find any documentation that they were the general contractor there. So it would be nice for you to provide that, just so that we can get an idea of that this isn't just a convenient general contractor because he's your husband. But I think that we need to have somebody that has some experience. The next part of that is when we talk about identity of interest and how, once again, we kind of feel duped that this was never disclosed. The IDA identifies the identity of interest on page 7 of their application and page 51 of their document regarding low-income housing tax credits and identity of interest, that in cases where there is an identity of interest between a sponsor and a project general contractor, between a sponsor and architect, or between a project architect and general contractor, the construction cost breakdown must be completed by an independent third-party construction cost estimation firm according to the authority's standards for construction cost estimating available. So I'm just curious, in the identity of interest, is this something that you completed? Is this something that you've disclosed to the city of Geneva, to the commissioners? Because I truly feel that there is a big conflict here when it was decided that Door Creek Construction is going to be the general contractor for this development.
Should I be answering these as we go along, or?
Well, I just want to make sure, are those all your questions at this time?
Oh, no, I have, okay, sorry, moving on. The next one was number 21, where you talk about the safety and police calls in Sterling and Rock Falls. I understand that at the last meeting, that those were specific developments that were called out, and you've mentioned time and time again that you are only a minority managing member of these developments, and you don't have any control over the day-to-day management or operations for either community. However, I did notice that there was a resident who submitted some information about Stonebridge of Gurnee, where Vantage Property Management is the property manager there, and some of the calls were a little bit alarming. Let me just pull this up here. So let's see here. The first 2 were criminal sexual assault. We have battery, domestic battery, aggressive assault. So this is a property that you actually do manage through Vantage Management. So I'm wondering if you can explain, aside from the ones that you always say that you're not affiliated with, why these calls are constantly being made. And if we go up to the next one about previous number 20, where we talk about the riders. So were these people that were getting called for criminal sexual assault, were they provided with warnings? Were they assessed fines, or were they not offered lease renewals? I think that's really important for the people that live in this community to know the answer to that question.
All right, thank you. Tracy, do you have any response to that?
It's not up to me what businesses create a website. Door Creek Construction doesn't have one, I'll believe you. I haven't looked for it. I can send you the resume through the city. You can FOIA it. I'll send you their resume. It shows everything that they've built. The cost estimate, that's a third party that does that. I don't do that till we get a real development going and we start doing cost analysis on different subcontractors. So yes, that's done. The Stonebridge of Gurnee, that's a supportive living facility for physically disabled folks with their primary disability. Some of them have MI issues. And there's one that I'm thinking of that somebody, I believe, went into one of the residents' apartments and then she called the police instead of just going to the property manager. So I can go through with the management company and the executive director of that building, all of the calls of the last 3 years to find out who did what and what happened. That'll take some time, but I'll ask them to do that for you.
All right, thank you. Yes, next question, please.
The commission now recognizes Jill Wigler. Jill, please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. It's Wilger. So I have a couple questions. My name is Joe Wilger, and I'm at 2615 Cedar Avenue. And I just want to follow up with what Lindsay said first with regard to the supportive housing. It really came as a surprise to me at the last meeting that Emma's Landing was going to set aside, I believe it was 7 or 15% of its affordable housing units for supportive living. That was nowhere to be found in any documentation, in any agenda item in the city, in any write-up, in anything. It only came about because a resident asked. And so now we know that you are, Ms. Manning, putting forward some supportive housing in this affordable housing. And I want to know, is this part of a drug, alcohol, mental illness, medical? Is it supportive housing for all of those needs? That's one. And as a follow-up to that is, if it is, this is and this was brought up earlier but not answered by Ms. Manning, is in R7 districting, do services like medical services or counseling services, are those a permitted use in R7 or an accessory use? Because I looked and I couldn't find that. And of course, I didn't really have a whole lot of time, but I don't have that answer. So perhaps it's more of a two-part question, one to Ms. Manning and one to city staff. My second question has to do with the housing market evaluation that Ms. Manning did on property in Elgin. So I'd like clarification on that. Number one is, wasn't that affordable housing built on a vacant industrial site? One. So any type of increase in value from a vacant industrial site would obviously occur. My second point is, if you took the time to do a market analysis over there in Elgin, why did you not just come to this property here in Geneva and do the market analysis here with the surrounding neighborhood and all the situation that is here in Geneva, so we can actually have an apples to apples comparison? And again, I'd like you to refer back to the request by this commission back in March that asked you exactly that. So is there some way you could explain why that wasn't done? And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Tracy?
So the 7 supportive housing units, they're there in case there's anyone that has a need. Those services could be coming to check if you've been taking your medicine. Do you have a doctor's appointment? Did you go? It could be job training. Those are, and it could be case management, seeing if they're going through something, do they need help? That's an agency that does that. They're directly tied. We don't have anything to do with that. Water's Edge, yes, it was built on a vacant piece of property. I think they just had a semi sitting on it for years is what I was told. That we did the assessment with the assessor's office because the building was built there and we wanted to show pre-Water's Edge and post-Water's Edge and what happened to the assessments. I didn't create those. Those came directly from the township assessor's office. I didn't do it in Geneva because I don't have an affordable housing development there, pre-construction and post-construction, to show you what would happen if a development would be built on that property.
Okay, and then I think the zoning question, David, and it's an interesting question. I don't know if there's really an answer for that one.
I think the primary use of the property and of the unit is as a dwelling unit. And
correct.
If somebody comes to provide additional services to that unit, it would be an accessory use. And
yeah, it would just be like a nursing call or something to a resident. Yeah, a home care kind of situation where a person has a special need and is visited by an outside professional. I don't think we control that in residential zoning in Geneva. All right, next question, please.
The commission now recognizes Martin Automanelli. Martin, please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony. Martin, I think you are self-muted.
Martin,
can you hear me now?
There you are. We can hear you.
Thanks very much. First, let me thank the commission for all the time and energy spent on this. I'm glad you're doing it because I wouldn't want to trade places with you. I have 4 questions and 1 comment. And I believe all of my questions touch on, in some way, topics that were addressed tonight. The first is really a request for clarification with regard to the leasing up of the properties. It's been stated that there is a planned marketing campaign within the Geneva area to possibly identify people who work and live within the, let's say, the Fox Valley. I understand it can't be determined, but that's been stated. A heavy marketing campaign will be conducted. At the same time, there was reference to a waiting list is being compiled and maintained. To me, those 2 things seem to be at odds. Maintaining a waiting list in advance of a marketing campaign is confusing to me, so I would ask if you could please clarify that. We have talked about the number of students flowing into Geneva schools, so I'm going to ask for a little bit of leeway on this question, and that is, can you please just tell me where the bus stop is? Is it on Emma's Way or is it on Lewis? And if the latter, have we taken that into account with regard to traffic flow and that impact? With regard to the site manager, we've talked about business hours today. I think it was 9 to 4:30 that was referenced. If you could please clarify, are we still anticipating that there will be an on-site manager in residence at Emma's Landing? Because I didn't hear that mentioned tonight, but it was mentioned in previous meetings. And then we've talked about the site plan in general. Again, I'm going to ask for some leeway here. Could you please just let me know, is there any kind of a safety barrier anticipated at the back of the property where the railroad tracks are? Since there will be children at this property, is there any kind of a barrier that will prevent accidents? Those are my 4 questions, and now my comment. I would just say, in the responses that Ms. Manning provided to the questions that were put forth in the January 14th meeting, you say, in the spirit of openness and transparency. I would just say, I guess transparency is one of those words that might mean different things to different people. It would have been completely transparent had it been disclosed that your husband is the president of the general contractor. That's transparent. Are you required to disclose that? Probably not. Is it illegal? Probably, certainly not. But it would have been transparent. So, if you could please address my 4 questions, I would appreciate it.
Leasing the property and marketing and how that is in contrast to the wait list. So when we're 80% or so completed with construction, we start marketing the property. We start passing out flyers. We would put all the businesses up and down Randall Road. We could put it in the newspaper, and that's the advertising. And from that, we generate more folks for the wait list. When I started developing a property, the word gets out, just like it gets out to all of you. Folks want to live in the buildings that we build, and I do start a wait list. We have a few people on the wait list right now for Geneva. And then that wait list folds in. So those people that are on the wait list first, today, when we start leasing, those folks get called first and they go through the process. And in addition, we continue marketing and advertising. We keep a wait list. We go through the wait list. I think it's required a couple times a year to purge that wait list with anybody that's not interested in living there anymore. And that's how we keep a wait list. Where's the bus stop? I think that's a city question. The site manager, yes, they're going to be on site. The hours will be something like 9 to 4:30. They could be 8:30 to 4:30. They could be 8 to 4, 8 to 5. We haven't identified that yet, but it'll be Monday through Friday. I think that's just normal for apartments. This isn't any different. And as far as the site plan, right now, we don't have anything in the back of the building the back of the site along between the homes and the tracks. My goal is to, and it is my goal, we always do upgrades toward the end, and that is one item that we would like to work with, either berming it or fencing it, if we have the funds to do that.
Okay, bus stop question, that's probably school district, David.
That's right. The school district would determine where the bus stop would be once they know where the students are.
Yeah, so depending on how many people or students actually come out of development, they actually cite where the buses stop, and I don't think we can answer that question at this stage. The school district's going to determine that. Next question. Wait a second. I'm sorry, John. Commissioner Mead, I was not looking for you to raise your hand on that.
That's okay. I was just, I wasn't sure, Tracy, if you answered the question of whether or not the manager would be on-site in residence. If I missed that, I'm sorry. I know that it had been asked by Mr. Autumanelli, so.
Okay. We do, that is, our hope is to have someone on site living there with management skills. We received one applicant that does have a little management experience, that's interested in living in the apartments, but also would like to talk to our management company about a job. So when we're advertising, we're also looking for the site manager to live on site. I'm very hopeful that that will happen. I would like to see that happen.
All right. Yes, Rebecca. Commissioner Holman.
I was just going to say with the school bus, those school bus stops can change every year based on where the kids live and then, the closest intersection and different things. So just because it's at one block one year, it could change to 2 blocks away the next year. And I don't know, it's kids moving in, kids moving out, different things like that. So that's kind of a in-flow decision.
Yeah, it definitely varies year to year, just depending on the total attendance and what's going on in the area, so.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Rittenhouse.
Tracy, this is more of a question to kind of put this issue, to clarify the issue that people are going to ask about your husband. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it is kind of,
okay.
Yeah. When you spoke earlier that your husband was just taking a paycheck for the contractor, honestly, I thought he was like an electrician or a carpenter. The fact that people are bringing up the fact that he's the president of the company, can you please clarify what that means?
Well, I just texted him. I asked him if he's the president, and he wrote me back no, because I didn't know that he was the president. I remember years ago when he first kind of started with them, they put him in there, but then it didn't last long. So that might have been at that paper. You have to look at the date on the paperwork. But I just asked him, and he just texted me back no.
Thank you.
He is a project manager.
Okay, any other questions, follow up on the commission? I just make sure yes, Commissioner Mead, I had a feeling there was going to be one, yes. For some reason.
I just want to clarify the contractor. If I recall correctly, the first generation design that then was used by your architect for MS Landing was a property in Oswego. And was that contract, did they build that project down in Oswego or no?
Door Creek, yes.
Okay, because that's important. I think that it's a similar design, similar materials. Obviously, it's next generation. The buildings are slightly different, but that contractor has hands-on experience with the same types of materials, same types of design, same type of layout of a similar property down the river, 20 miles or something. So I think that's important, and that's an important qualification for the contractor that I think is a good one to note, that they've had hands-on construction. The stuff they're doing behind the Walmart, those are major projects. This is a contractor that seems to have a resume. I haven't seen it. I don't need to see it personally, but seems to have the resume to build this particular project.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, anything? Yes, Adam.
Sorry, just another follow-up question for Tracy. Tracy, you had mentioned that the person flies out from Colorado and trains with the manager, or is that someone local?
Yeah, in Quincy.
Okay, so you guys do have local representation, supervision of that manager locally, not only from another state.
Well, with COVID shutdown, she doesn't come up as much, but she's usually up here for a week at a time every month. But at the beginning of developments, she's here for a few weeks getting things going and training.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. Just because your comment of mentioning that the person that you might have identified as living on site has little management experience, I just want to make sure that that person has the supervision and the oversight and locally to support them. Thank you.
Okay. Any other further follow-up from the commissioners? Okay. All right. Next question, please.
The commission now recognizes Joe Kiefer. Joe, please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for your time. I guess I'm still a little disbelief that Miss Manning doesn't know what her husband exactly does.
I didn't, yeah.
Maybe I'm missing some. If I could respond direct to the discussion on senior housing, I have to say that just because seniors can possibly live at Emma's Landing, that doesn't satisfy anybody's desire to have senior housing. The seniors applying stand significantly less chance of living there when they're competing against every other applicant for the state. That's actually the point of senior housing, having specifically senior housing. So the fact that they can apply doesn't satisfy anybody's drive for more senior housing. I have a prepared statement last time I asked questions. So I would like to just read a statement that I made.
Sir,
And there are some questions in there.
Sir, if you already read the statement, last time we heard it.
I didn't read the statement last time I asked questions last time, sir.
Okay. Very well.
Thanks. First, I want to object to this process occurring over a virtual platform. I don't think this is a necessary project that demands sacrificing and limiting the ability of citizens to engage their city and engage the developer on the very important and long-lasting issues surrounding the development. If anything, this development's long-term presence demands a very thorough review, which include allowing all citizens the ability to contribute their thoughts in person so everyone can communicate effectively in all facets. I just want to say my audio has cut out twice tonight. It wasn't for too long, but I still had to log back in. Clearly, something is lost when having virtual meetings only happen when necessary. I reviewed most of the documents posted this afternoon, but I am sorry, as a working stiff, I did not have time to review all of this. And I thought, according to the city attorney, I think it was, since I couldn't tell who was speaking, everyone would get the evidence during the meeting. So I would just request, if you're going to publicize answers, I would suggest you give more time to review going into a meeting such as this. As such, I would object if you vote tonight, given that your citizens have had only minutes to review 250 pages.
Are you still there?
I asked several questions last week and have seen answers to some of them. Maybe the rest of the answers are.
Sir, this is your opportunity. Sir, this is, sorry to interrupt. This is your opportunity. If you feel like we have not answered a question that you have asked, you need to ask it.
Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you. So if you feel like you've asked a question that we haven't addressed to date, you need to ask
Come on, man.
now.
Hey, man, I can't hear you. I'm sorry, you're all broken. Hang on, switch to the audio. Can you wait?
Sure. Okay, are you there? All right, I think we've lost him. He's offline, so we'll move on to the next question. Hopefully we can hear from him so he can complete his questions. So we'll move on from now since he appears not to be online. So I'm not cutting him off. He's just not online. He can't respond. I can't hear him. Do we have another questioner, please?
The commission now recognizes Steve Hernandez. Steve, please proceed to unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Are you on?
Hi, guys.
Hey, there you
Hello?
are.
Yeah. P. Hernandez, again, 2887 Omar Court, asking as a question as the president of the HOA. So I have a little confusion. The civil engineer mentioned that there would be a pipe that would be going down into the other retention pond. Is that a correct assumption of how I interpreted that statement?
Yeah, I'll let the applicant's engineer respond to that question.
Yes, there'll be it's called a control structure. They're very common on detention ponds. So it's what it'll do. It's a large structure that has a plate in it, and in that plate there's a 7-inch hole that's cut on that plate. So when the pond is completely full, the only water getting out is down at the bottom of this plate, which will go through the outlet pipe, and then there'll be an outlet pipe about 12 inches that will go into your the west pond right there. That's how it will release.
Okay, do you have anything further? Okay, I guess not. So, oh, you're still mute. I believe you're still muted if you have a follow-up to that. Okay, I guess not. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question.
The commission now recognizes Karen Damaris. Karen, please proceed to unmute yourself and proceed with your question.
Hi, I live at 748 Lewis Road. This is to the commission. I am still really concerned about security and safety issues with a project like this size. And I just ask that you look at that carefully. And I ask that Tracy look at all her properties because I did FOIA the police departments or the cities for the locations of all of the Burton Foundation sites that were on the website. And it's more than just Gurney that has police logs like that. So please look at all of them. And what does it mean you do a background check, then what? I didn't hear anything about what you do as a result of the background check. And then Quincy is not really local. I think she mentioned the manager is down in is local in Quincy. It's not local. There's a study done in Batavia, or was done in Batavia, on affordable housing, where experts review affordable housing developments in comparison to communities such as Geneva and determine whether the housing negatively impacts the surrounding homes. Could something like that be done instead of comparing it to an empty lot with a semi parked on it?
Is that your
Those
questions?
are my questions.
Okay, those are your questions. All right, thank you. Tracy?
Most of them, the background checks, we run one on every person that comes in. They're treated on a case-by-case basis. We don't allow Class X felons to come into our buildings. Most of our background checks, only the last 10 years, but we've had very few come back with anything on their record. But we do the background checks, and we do take care of them on a case-by-case basis. It depends on what they've done. And we do follow all the fair housing laws, so that's our guide.
Okay. Next question, please.
The commission now recognizes Stephanie Stewart. Stephanie, please unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much. My name is Stephanie Stewart. I live at 2923 Caldwell. I do have a couple of questions for Tracy. One of my first questions would be in regards to supportive housing. With 7 units kept aside for supportive housing, if it's needed, my wonder is if we're talking about people who are homeless, very low income, substance abuse disorders, things of that nature, I would beg to make the assumption that these are going to be individuals that don't have access to transportation, like a vehicle. So my question is, with this development being tucked in the corner of Western Geneva, with zero access to public transportation, I'm wondering how these individuals are supposed to get to basic necessities like a grocery store, or get medical care, or receive possible counseling that they're involved in, or get to work. Right now, out here, there's one grocery store, it's Fresh Time, and it costs $3 to buy 2 tomatoes. So I'm trying to understand how someone who is in a supportive housing situation, who is for this homeless with seemingly no income, is going to afford to get to things that they need in order to survive, like food, medical care. I mean, are they going to walk 3 miles to the Pace bus station on Randall Road? I'm not understanding how the location makes sense for something like supportive housing. So I would like a little more information on that. I'm also trying to understand why there just really hasn't been any effort made in order to do any kind of an economic impact study. And I understand that she feels it can't be done because there's no before and after, because there's nothing to compare it to. But there have been studies done that show that homes within half a mile appreciated half the percentage of homes that are more than a mile away from affordable housing communities that are rentals. So I'm also asking Tracy and the commission, I want to know how it's okay to tell 1,000+ residents between Randall Square, Sterling Manor, Sunset Prairie, and on Brentwood's Pond that their homes are not going to appreciate at the rate that they could had this development not gone in. And I'm interested as to why true evidence of it increasing home value isn't required. Those are my 2 questions. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Tracy, do you have any further comment on the supported housing?
Well, for the supportive housing, we do have that in other of our buildings, and their income is usually an SSDI or SSI, and they do have the ones that we have in our other buildings. There are several that do drive. Others have parents that will come and get them. There's Ride and Cane. They call Ride and Cane, and they come and pick them up and take them to where they need to go. So these aren't homeless people that we have in our developments. For the most part, these are folks who do get money and they do drive, or they do have families that can visit them and take them where they need to go.
Okay.
Oh, we have a question from Commissioner Mead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should always check.
That's
Commissioner
okay.
Mead.
That's okay. Hey, Tracy, can you elaborate? So we have 7 units that are potentially set aside for supportive housing. Are you required to have those as supportive housing tenants? Or if there's less than 7 unit demand for your project, are you able to then lease them to more traditional tenant profiles?
Yeah, so there's a time limit, and then if we don't get an occupant for that unit, we can ask for a waiver, and we do that.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next question.
The commission now recognizes Lynn Moravec. Lynn, please proceed to unmute yourself and begin your testimony. Okay, there we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Good evening, my name is Lynn Moravec, and I live on Lewis Road in Geneva.
Lynn, can you turn down your volume a little bit?
For some reason, I am echoing.
Yes.
Oh, let me turn my TV down.
There you go. Yeah, we're hearing background noise. Much better.
There we go, is that better?
Much better.
Okay. My name is Lynn Moravec. I live in Geneva, Illinois, on Lewis Road, and I just have a question and a comment. My first question is going to you on the board, on the commissioner board. I would like to know if any of you knew that Tracy Manning's husband was the contractor for this project. My other comment is, I know what my husband does for a living. I hope you all know what your wives and husbands do for livings. I find it truly unbelievable that she would sit on TV when we're watching this and say, I just texted my husband and asked if he was the president. Really? I mean, this is so alarming. That just shows the character and the transparency that she's claiming. I would also like to know, I believe she made a comment that somebody was aware in the city that her husband was the contractor. I would like to know who is that? Who was aware of this?
Ma'am.
And why wasn't this publicly?
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Publicly.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but again, we're in open discovery right now, and facts come to our preview during the hearing. That's why we do them. So, I mean, I can only state for myself personally. I don't know the particular marital status of Ms. Manning. Okay? Nor I don't think anybody else in the commission does either, but through the discovery process, we find these things out. Is it germane to the matter at hand in terms of what we're here to look at for land use and the appropriateness of the site?
It's the project that is going to be happening by the Burton Foundation, where if there's already lies and deceit and non-transparency of what's going on here, what is going to happen in the future?
Okay. Do you have a question? Do you have another question for the commission?
No, I think I could pretty much leave it there. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Next question, please.
Okay, we have Steve Hernandez back on the line. So Steve, if you want to unmute yourself and continue with your testimony.
Steve, are you there?
I'm here.
There you
dealing
go.
Dealing with technology like everybody else. Okay, so I didn't hear the answer, and I should include my follow-up question. Basically, my concern is, and I don't know the legalities of it and understand exactly what's being done for engineering, but my question goes to how does the city/developer plan on accessing private land which we own? So I don't know if you guys see this as a right-of-way to gain access to draining into the lower pond, which belongs to the association. So that I just want some clarification on that, because this is kind of the first time that I'm hearing about it. So if you could just give us some insight on that, and repeat the answer to the previous question that I asked.
Could you remind me what the previous question was?
Yeah, how they were planning on draining from that pond to the lower pond. I believe he said using a pipe, the civil engineer. And then
Yeah.
my question then is, how do they plan on accessing our piece of land from that property?
Okay. All right, Tracy, engineering.
Yeah, Dave Riondo here again. I'll answer that. I'm a professional engineer and I'm also a professional land surveyor. And one of the first things I did when I started this project is I researched all the existing deeds, easements, recorded things that came on when they recorded the original Sterling Manor plats. And it's clearly stated in those plats that this parcel that the city owns has every right to drain that water down into that pond. And the crescent lot out front, this parcel has every right to cross that for drainage, utilities. It's clearly written on that plat. Okay, and then the next question, like I told you, how the pipe was going to drain that pond. Now, I may not have fully answered a question that someone asked early about what happens when this pond overflows. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit more about that. So I told you about the control structure. It takes this water and releases it at a much slower rate. But if we do get something more than the 100-year flow, right next to the control structure will be a concrete weir that is going to overflow into the pond below. And that'll be armored, so it will be protected from erosion. And it's common standard practice on detention ponds that they have a controlled overflow location. I hope that answers your question.
All right, so we're getting close to 10 o'clock, and per the commission's bylaws, I need to query the commissioners and find out if we are going to go longer than our curfew in order to continue this public hearing. So I don't know what I need a motion and whatever, if we want to continue, suspend, just what the feeling is. Yes, Commissioner Holman. Rebecca.
Sorry about that. Is there a way to know how many more people want to make the public comments? Or is it just kind of a rolling?
Yeah, I kind of queried that. It kind of fluctuates, but I just asked, but.
Yeah, the remaining people who have their hands up will be speaking for the second or third time. We only have 2 left.
And then we leave it open for a few more minutes and see if anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of like to try to go through the second phase of questioning, since it is questions based on what was presented tonight. So this would be a good, if we could get through, it would be good. But, again, I gotta have you guys along for the ride to do it, so.
Let's push on a little further.
Okay, so we'll continue.
Here, here.
Let's see how things go. All right, next question. Oh, I guess David's now informed me I must get an official motion on that and roll call. So Celeste, prepare for a roll call. Do I hear a motion? John?
Commissioner Mead, submit a motion to continue this public hearing past 10 o'clock to 10:30.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
I have second by Evans.
We do. Celeste, please call the roll.
Okay, Metaskill,
Madaskill, aye.
Evans,
Evans, aye.
Holloman.
Holloman, aye.
Mead.
Mead, aye.
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse, aye.
Slipka.
Slipka, aye.
Stocking.
Stocking eye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Celeste. All right,
welcome.
we'll continue with the questions at this time.
Okay, the commission now calls upon Joe Kiefer. Joe, please proceed to unmute yourself.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hey, Joe, sorry we lost you there.
No worries. Does anybody know where I left off? Anybody remember what I was talking
Well, I
about?
think what I was trying to do, I think you completed your statement, but I don't want to speak for you.
Unfortunately, sir, I did not.
Okay, so why don't we finish with your statement and then try to get, you had mentioned that there were some questions that have been remained unanswered from their previous meeting, so I want to make sure if you think we've missed something, we get them.
Very good. Thank you very much. Well, I will continue where I think I left off then. I asked several questions last week and have seen answers to some of them. Maybe the rest of the answers were buried in the 250 pages, but I did not see them. My first question I asked was, how much in taxes are we getting from the Burton Foundation's development? I did not see that answer. Your mission as the Planning and Zoning Commission is to recommend improvements to the city. And if we don't know what benefit the most basic and tangible identifier, in other words, income, provides, can we really recommend a zoning change for this? I submit you can't. So please obtain more information on this. So that's a remaining question, sir, is how much in taxes is the city deriving? I asked how the renting process will work, and the applicant responded that they will advertise with little further detail. I want to know who will be reviewing applications. Is it Vanguard or the Burton Foundation? Is it another party? And who ultimately will be saying yes or no? I would assume it's the Burton Foundation, but if it is not, shouldn't we provide some questioning to that group or individual approving? There is a priority from supporters that we take care of citizens of Geneva. In this answer and elsewhere in the Burton Foundation's answers, it becomes clear that there is no expectation to assist specifically the citizens of Geneva. Geneva residents are simply given an equal share with anyone else meeting the financial standards and receiving the Burton Foundation's advertising. I take issue with that. The Burton Foundation responds that the Fair Housing Act prevents them from restricting access to a certain locality. That is misplacement and misuse of the law and merely an excuse. The Federal Housing Act does not apply to situations involving proximity. It involves protecting certain classes of people based on race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, family status, and surprisingly, White Sox fans. See, if that joke was in person, everybody would be laughing. Another example of how virtual meetings just inherently prevent effective communication. But I digress. Of course, it has nothing to do with White Sox fans. The point is, the reason why the Burton Foundation can't restrict their tenants to Geneva or the Tri-Cities is because the Illinois Housing and Development Authority requires it. IDA won't give the benefit to the Burton Foundation to benefit Geneva. IDA will give the Burton Foundation tax benefits to benefit anyone in the state. It is a condition of receiving LIHTC funding. FHA simply doesn't apply, and the Burton Foundation must accept someone in Illinois with a housing voucher as equal to an applicant from Geneva. There have been opponents saying we can't talk about Who will be living there? That is a joke. Of course we can, and we must, because we need to ensure that the Burton Foundation takes sufficient steps to take care of, say, disabled tenants. If they don't, the city is liable, and disabled tenants are a protected class, and we must, should, and need to talk about them to ensure that they are taken care of. The same applies to those in supportive housing. It appears 7 units will be occupied by those needing social services. What does that mean? I asked the Burton Foundation to further define that because I take it as homeless folks. So 7 units could be filled with homeless. Those are multi-room units. Do the residents know each other? If this is the case, do we need to consider this along the lines of a homeless shelter? Which are needed, but again, we should look into how best to take care of a group of residents who require additional services. Are we just going to depend on unknown social services and wave our hand and say, yeah, we're good? What if the social services drop off? Who takes care of those in supportive housing? I would submit to you that it is our city. And we should step up now to determine if we should recommend this project to the city based on the information that we have right now. I also asked, how will the Burton Foundation or their manager manage occupancy rates? I did not see an answer. Please answer that question.
What do you, sir, I need clarification on that. What do you mean by occupancy rates?
How are they going to ensure that if they rent to a family of 4, there aren't actually 10 people living there? Bringing in more cars and potentially more students, things of that sort. That's what I mean by occupancy. Is that clear, sir?
Yes, that's clear.
All right.
Do you have any additional questions?
I do, sir. I'm not done with my statement, but I am almost done. I also asked the Burton Foundation to define what was meant by zero tolerance. I did not see an answer. Please provide details as to what you mean by that. Zero tolerance for convicted criminals? What about noise complaints? Another way of putting it is, what are your specific eviction standards? So please answer that question. And last, I read a comment that the housing financial impact study submitted by a resident of Sterling Manor to the zoning committee was deemed invalid. That claim is unsupported. The same study was submitted to the Batavia City Council and was ignored on record by 1 or maybe 2 Batavia aldermen who opined that it was invalid and chose to ignore it. There was no overarching or group authority representing that it is invalid. It was dismissed by elected proponents of the Campana development. And for the above reasons, at this time, I do not support Emma's Landing. Would you like me to go back and reread my questions?
No, I think we've got them.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Tracy, I think you've commented on a number of them, but would you like to address some of these?
Sure. There was a question about leasing and managing. We do not manage our own buildings. We do third-party manage. Vantage takes care of all of that. The notion that anyone in Illinois can live in any building in the state of Illinois, that's a true statement. We can't stop people from moving in any city, any state. So our goal is marketing, flyers, Randall Road, and then at some point advertising, Daily Herald, and so on. So the marketing plan hasn't been completed, but that's normally what we do. Managing occupancy rates, that's different to me than are the people in the units taking care. Our maintenance goes in to replace furnace filters and taking care of any work orders that are done. And he looks around and he'll let the property manager know. And that's in all buildings. They let property manager know if they see something that maybe all the furniture is in front of a window that's a fire hazard, so they need to have it moved. So there's a lot of eyes on the units. As far as zero tolerance, my point is that we have written up folks for a lease violation. Maybe a car was in a yard and he was working on it, and that's not allowed in our buildings or our developments, and they get written up for it, and it doesn't happen again. If there's any criminal activity, if they're prosecuted and convicted, then they will end up probably losing the apartment, and I would assume that that would happen. I can't presuppose what's going to happen and look into the future. I think those were his questions, Chairman. Is that correct?
I think that covers most of them, and a number of things that he asked for we had already covered in previous statements from you.
And one thing that a couple folks, Lindsay and the last speaker, keep bringing up is, how do I not know what my husband does for a living? Well, I do. That when I said no, he's not the president of Door Creek Construction, they challenged me. So I got the answer from him. That was why I know that he's not. You didn't take my word, so I asked him.
All right, that's fine. As far as the tax question is concerned, I think you mentioned earlier in the initial public hearing that this is an $18 million project, something of that nature, Tracy, I believe?
Yes.
So there's an $18 million investment here, so it will be taxed appropriately. Yeah, it's also currently doesn't have, the city owns the land, so we don't tax it. And then, David, of course, we have the monetary requirements per the ordinance in terms of, for school district and park district. So the impact fees, for new development, which all residential development, when the city pays those impact fees, and this project is no different. So there are impact fees that are paid as part of this project, and it's been recently, I think, was it the last 2 years something, David, was updated?
It was February of 2018 that it was updated,
Okay,
so
so
just about 3 years ago.
So it's fairly current in terms of the current land values and expected generation, so impact generated. So I think we're current on that. It'll be taxed appropriately per an $18 million project. Next question.
The commission now calls upon Chris Bonner. Chris, please proceed to unmute yourself and proceed with your questions.
Yeah, I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yeah, I got kicked off, so I was just able to get back on.
Sorry
so
about that.
If I'm just making sure this is the right avenue. It sounds like folks are asking questions to answers that were given for tonight's meeting. Is that true?
That is what we're trying to do today. Yes. So
Okay. I guess yeah. So my only follow up, my question would be to Tracy. Her answer around the traffic studies. She basically, to summarize it, Tracy, you mentioned it was prudent because all of other cities and counties are doing the same thing and building buildings and moving forward with stuff like that. Really, at the end of the day, if I think I'm right, most counties have their own mandates. So why does Geneva have to be status quo for that type of stuff? You don't live off Lewis Avenue. I've got two little girls. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And a lady mentioned earlier that her husband almost gets hit by cars. I will never, ever, ever, even when my daughters are older, let them walk across Lewis Road from Peterson Court by themselves unattended. So if you're okay with doing a quasi traffic study and that's prudent for you and you really don't know what the ramifications will be when we are back to some normalcy, and I start driving to work, I only drive to the train Tuesdays and Thursdays. Quite frankly, I stay at home with my wife and my kids the rest of the day. I don't drive. So it's not a prudent study. The ramifications are just I think they're going to be tenfold, and the safety's not there until an actual true statement, or excuse me, a true study can be done. And then why and then another reason why it's important is because with a park and playground sitting to the north of Lewis and a large majority of Sterling Manor homes sitting on the south side of Lewis, most children have to cross Lewis in order to reach the playground or play space, if you will. Numerous times, I've had to wait with my two girls who I just mentioned, 4 and 2, as cars, speed past, even though, we're clearly in the line of vision, the marked pedestrian crosswalk, wherever, cars fly down there. The city, I'll give the city credit. There are some speed signs they put up occasionally, and I see cops here and there, or police officers here and there. I don't think it's done enough, but they try. The lives of children, including my 2 daughters, who often don't have a full adult capabilities of judging spatial distance needed to cross streets, especially with cars traveling above the posted speed limits, which is all the time, on Lewis especially, or who are still in the midst of learning to stop and look both ways in a playground park area specifically created for them to come and gather, should trump any thought of a traffic study being an issue not worthy of consideration. One child lost would be one child too many. And quite frankly, the amount of times that my daughters have almost gotten hit with me, in the back of my head, it could be one of my kids. So that's just, that's my comment and question.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think we're probably down to the end here. Are there any additional? I think we have one additional.
We have one more. The commission now calls upon Karen Damaris. Karen, please proceed to unmute yourself and proceed with your questions.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes. You don't sound like Karen, though.
No, I'm not sure about the technology and how things got signed up. So my name is Don. My name's Don Inman. I live at 748 Lewis Road. I just kind of want to follow up. I've been listening the whole time, but it seems like one of the most recent questions, all I can really remember, but the gentleman that had called in and was kind of cut off, and then he called in again because he's persistent. He asked a very specific question to Tracy about do you have a written something we can look at when you talk about the zero tolerance. I didn't really hear an answer to that. And he said specifically in terms of eviction. And I didn't really hear an answer to that. And I'll say that seems to be a trend. Just kind of skirt the issue or answer the first question, but not the second question. So I'm asking Tracy, both of those 2 questions, what's the specific answer to those specific questions? You can repeat them back so you know what I'm saying and I can go, yes. I'd like to stay on the line so I can repeat back if she kind of doesn't really answer the question. But my second set of questions is to the commission.
Wait a second. Let's just try to answer this question.
Well, I got a question for you, sir, if you don't mind.
Not at this time. You've asked a question. Let's give Tracy an opportunity to answer the question.
So the management company, how do they handle resident who breaks the lease is number 20 from last zoning meeting that I submitted and I read today. The residents that don't follow the housing rules are either provided warnings, assessed fines, not offered lease renewals, or evicted based on the severity of the issue.
Yeah, so many times you have stated we have a zero tolerance policy. What exactly is that? Because a policy is a written item. Do you have a copy of that, or is it just kind of fluff words? I'm just curious.
They have documents that the management company uses, probably just as all market rate management companies have.
I'm not really sure what that means. Do you know? Because you stated several times we have a zero tolerance policy. You stated that, so I'm curious. Is those just fluff words? Because that's not the difference.
It just depends. There's a lot of things that people can do.
No, it's your words
Sir,
I'm talking about. It's the words that come out of your mouth, Tracy.
Sir, would you please
Yes.
allow her
Yes,
to
ma'am.
answer the question? You asked a question, then you interrupt her when she's trying to answer. Tracy, please answer the question.
If someone's working on their vehicle, changing oil, changing a tire, working on their engine, that's a lease violation. That's a minor. If there is someone who was identified by the police as a drug dealer, they would lose their apartment. It depends. That's two extremes, but it just depends on what they're doing. And there are warnings that are given to residents. They are assessed fines if there's damages. We do not renew leases if people are paying late and are not up to speed with their rent for the year. They could not have a lease renewal. There's so many different, there's no way to answer that because there's so many different things that they could be doing. The answer is if they're breaking the lease, they're assessed fines, they're not offered lease renewals, or they're evicted based on the severity of the issue.
Did that answer your question?
Don, you are unmuted on our end if you want to unmute yourself to continue with your questions.
To answer your question, did it answer my question? No, it did not.
What didn't it answer?
My question was, my specific question was, Tracy, I believe you stated you have a no tolerance policy. Do you have a no tolerance policy, or do you have all those little, if somebody washes their car, then you might give them a warning? What does the word no tolerance policy mean? Because you said you have one. Do you have one?
In violation of a lease or any of the addendums, they are given a written warning. They are assessed fines, or they're not renewed the lease, or they may be evicted.
So no tolerance really does, in my mind, I don't think that's the interpretation. We believe that no tolerance means one strike, you're out, and you're saying one strike, you get a warning. Is that right?
No, it just depends on what the issue is.
What if I leave my trash out in the driveway 4 times? Do I get a warning?
For the 4th time, is that what you said?
Okay, for the 4th time.
I didn't hear your question. Was it for the, if you leave your trash out, you're going to get a notice. You're going to get the warning.
Okay, so what do I do with that? Put my trash out on the, because you said no tolerance, and I just want to know what no tolerance means. You don't have a written policy.
I think you asked and she answered the question. Okay?
No, I think she, sir, if you don't mind, I think she avoided the answer.
No, she did not. She answered directly. And again, I think it totally is dependent on the action. We could spend the rest of the night going through a laundry list of possible things that could happen and determine what the actual rule is on that. And I don't think that would add any value to this. It's enough to know that she's a prudent.
Okay.
It's enough to
Go ahead
know
and
as
talk.
any
Go ahead and
person.
talk. Even though you asked me to talk tonight, I would like to go ahead and finish that. So I have a question for.
Allow me to finish my statement. It's enough to know that she's like any other person who has rental property and she enforces the lease and she has a property manager on site We can't go through the minutia of finding out whether if a person leaves trash out in the front of the lot or they're gonna get evicted. I think the answer is probably no. Adam, I believe you were trying to be recognized.
Yes, thank you. I guess to maybe help explain some of the questions that a lot of people have mentioned, would you be able to provide us a copy of the rental criteria and the community policies that people can review? Obviously, we're well aware, well, some people are aware that some things that are done by the residents that are minor versus major really are dependent on fair housing rules and the laws, but better understanding of what your rental criteria is and what your community policies and what the no-nos are might help put people at ease and give them a little more comfort.
Thank you. Commissioner Mead, I believe you also wanted to say something.
I just wanted to, what I'm hearing from Tracy, and I spent 30 plus years in commercial real estate and much of it around multifamily properties. What I'm hearing about the zero tolerance and lease administration is that it's a commercially standard operation. You're managing a community and you're managing, when someone comes in and they violated something, there is some subjectivity that a property manager has to be able to employ when they're working with a tenant. There are certain things that, as Tracy mentioned, that rise to the level that there's going to be very little or no tolerance, whether, if it's a crime or something else. But if somebody, litters on the property or something else, there's a communication that has to go on and a relationship that develops between tenant and landlord. And that's what I'm hearing is that Burton Foundation manages their property in a commercially acceptable manner, similar to other similar properties in the industry, in Illinois and across the country. And is that right, Tracy, that you try to manage properties on a case-by-case basis, consistent with how other properties are managed in your portfolio and other properties that you know of that are your competitors?
Yes. As far as the zero tolerance, my point is if they're doing something, they're going to get written up, or worse, if it's something severe, they get evicted. I mean, there's a range of things that they could do. That's the zero tolerance. We don't let things go on. Right. If somebody does something the first time, they get written up.
Right.
That's the zero tolerance. We want to keep it beautiful and clutter-free.
And that, to me, that's an acceptable answer to the question.
Commissioner Rittenhouse.
To John's point, Tracy, I think where there's some ambiguity is you guys don't actually manage the properties, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I think to be fair to John's point, and Commissioner Adam brought this up too, I would love to know more about Vantage or just tell them to put up a website or I'm saying it's, I think there's a lot of concern out there because, or there's some concern out there because you guys have hired a management firm to run this property. And obviously you understand the amount of resistance tonight that you're hearing. If they're in charge of it, that subjectivity that John is talking about could be concerning. If you guys are not, if Burton Foundation is not running and managing the property and you're contracting that out, I guess that is something that I think needs to be addressed.
Well, I'll address it. While I do third-party manage from my investment days in affordable housing, I manage the managing agent. From lease up, I'm looking at weekly occupancy reports. I want to see what's going on. Monthly, I get financial reports and rent roll. I drive by my properties. Well, since COVID, I haven't really been going out to Gurnee as much. I go by once every 2 weeks. I drive around. I make sure it's clean. I don't third-party manage and leave. I am overseeing it constantly.
Yes. Yes, Adam.
Just to confirm the question that I had, would you be able to provide us a copy of the rental criteria and the community policies for the public to review, to observe kind of what your criteria is for the people renting, and also the rules and regulations for the community?
So they're not my documents to share. I can ask the management company. But also I'd like to understand, in Geneva, is this a requirement for every apartment complex that goes up?
I can't speak to that, but I can assure you that providing us the rental criteria, any person that's going in there to apply, you guys are required by Fair Housing to have that up on the wall in the management office. So I don't see how that's a huge ask to just know what the guidelines are for if they're doing a background check and something comes up in their criminal background. How far do you go back? Do you go back 7 years? Do you go back 2 years?
No, I think the rule, I think it's a federal, I don't remember what the management company said. I believe they go back 8 years.
So just to be able to see
I
those,
can ask them for those documents.
the criteria would be great. Thank you.
All right, I think we've covered that ground extensively. So, sir, if you're still on the line, is he still on the line? I believe we've answered that question.
I think there was enough discussion to get, are you still there?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so I think there was enough discussion to have even one of you guys request the documents. And so I would hope that her hope to get those to you is a criteria to move forward in any way, shape, or form. You know, I think I can get those, not the state courts, I'll hand those over. And for her to say something like, do you do that with other people that don't have properties here? I'd like to remind Tracy, she doesn't have property here yet. So it would be nice for you to comply with what the commissioner.
No, I was wondering if it's a rule in Geneva for other market rate developments. Because I didn't apply them, because I didn't know to.
Hey, I thought I was addressing the councils. I really wasn't talking so much to you. I was saying you should hand stuff over when you're asked. If you're resistant, that already shows something. But my second question, this is more to the village or the city people, is it seems like, you know, many people have called in tonight and asked questions, and Tracy has half answered them. This is my opinion. But I didn't hear you guys go, hey, my citizen asked 2 questions and you answered 1. And one of them is the same question I'm calling to ask right now. So do you feel that all these questions that we write or we ask that Tracy doesn't answer, that they're going to be answered later? Or is this the time to keep asking until we get the answers? Because you guys didn't seem to pick up on some of the questions or ask her, Tracy, that wasn't the first and the second answer, because I've heard it happen dozens of times. So I'm just curious, did you hear it happen more than once? This is to the village or the city.
All right, so, I mean, again, we are doing our best in taking a very large base of testimony and going through the questions painstakingly. Now, whether we vet the questions to the extent that you can do it, I think that's part of what we're trying to do here. But in the end of the day, I don't know if we'll ever be able to satisfy it. So some of the questions are not germane to what's before us. They're not zoning and planning issues, which is our preview. So, you know, we will take the comment. They are concerns of the community, but it's not something we can act on as a body. So when we don't follow up with those questions, those are typically those types of questions where we can't, like, that's not what we do. So it's not germane to a zoning and planning, what's under our authority to rule on. So that's my answer. And again, we're trying to do the best we can with a very large record with a lot of testimony and a lot of questions. I think we've done pretty well, actually. Do you have anything further?
I do. First of all, I would agree some of the questions that you're fielding tonight have nothing to do with planning and zoning. So it was very kind of you and patient of you to go through what the citizens brought up. So just in general, you know, I get it. The fact that this is about plans, this is about, you know, infrastructure. But the thing is, I think you get it, and I think you mentioned it. This is also about what the citizens are interested in and the city's desire to serve its citizens, not, and I will say it black and white, not somebody that comes dancing in trying to stick some cardboard boxes that don't fit with the rest of the community. So my general comment is that I object to it going there. And I don't think that you guys would want that to look at that, the way that thing fits over there. It's a misfit, and all the things that people talk about. How is it going to best serve even the occupants? They're kind of boxed in a corner. So, you know, I really hope you guys consider just leaving some nuts and bolts stuff. It's a bad idea. Please start over with somebody that does have integrity and transparency, because that's what City of Geneva deserves. With that, again, I thank you all, and like to see all these things written and turned over earlier so people can respond to them next time.
All right, sir. Thank you for your comments. All right, so I'm going to put a last call on this again. We'd like to take testimony from people who haven't spoken up to this point on the review of what was stated in this meeting. So if there's someone still out there who wants to talk about it that hasn't already spoken, we will take your comment. Okay, so I'm being told that anybody that's in the queue already has already spoken this evening. So this would be anybody new who has not already previously spoken on asking a question, follow-up question on something that happened this evening in front of the commission.
So we have one individual who spoke at the last meeting.
So, yeah.
The commission now calls upon John Connolly. John, please proceed to unmute yourself and proceed with your question.
John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank God. Good. Probably last but not least, huh? Hey, anyway, hey, thank you guys for your service on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've got like 5 points. I'll try to go quick. I would like to hear Tracy's response to previous testimony last week on property value appreciation within 1 mile of these affordable housing developments. That is, we expect 3% appreciation around here locally. And so if I have a $400,000 house, which I probably have, that's $12,000 annually. But the testimony was it drops to 1.5%, which means $6,000 annually. So my concern is I'm looking at $6,000 a year, year after year after year. I'm out of my family's hide for this. And then the second point is if Tracy's husband has 1 ounce of involvement in this project, she is inherently conflicted. Third point, will or all or some of the supportive housing services that will they be conducted in the leasing and management offices? Fourth point, problems occur 24/7. One shift doesn't do it. Why can't we have 24/7 leasing management support? And the fifth point, hold on. Let me go to my notes here. Miss Mann, you didn't answer a previous question that I heard. A study was done in Batavia about housing devaluation. it can be done here. Why have you not conducted a market analysis in Geneva using comparable, similar communities? That's it. And thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Tracy, do you have anything to add on that?
Talking about property values, I gave what we had here in South Elgin. I could do them all over the state of Illinois. That would take a lot of time. I did it close to Geneva to show you what the increase was. Supportive housing services. The agencies go and talk to the residents in their own homes. That's a private thing. That's not done in the community office. 24/7 policing. This is an apartment complex with folks who live there. It's not a jail or prison, so we don't have any, I don't know of any 24/7 policing for any apartment complexes out this way. And again, back to the housing evaluation, I did the evaluation up here in South Elgin, which was just close to Geneva.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Mead.
Tracy, like many other apartment projects, is there an after-hours number if somebody's water heater goes out or something? There's a number for folks to call if there's an issue after 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
They do. There's an emergency to the maintenance man, and then we also partner with local businesses that are close to the property in case it's something. Yes.
Right. And that's what I would expect. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. This last call for folks who want to speak on what was presented this evening that have not already spoken.
The commission now recognizes Mike Schilling. Mike, please proceed to unmute yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Just keep going.
Mike, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Mike, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Yeah, I have a question that was one of the many questions that weren't answered. There was a question about occupancy rate per unit and how that is regulated and monitored.
I believe we've answered that question.
I didn't hear the answer.
Tracy?
Yes, I'm looking on my Q&A. But again, as far as number of occupants per unit, there's a kind of a guide for two people per bedroom, and I believe it's HUD that puts that out. That's where we go with this. If it's a boy and a girl, they can't share a unit.
So how's it enforced to keep 10 people from living in a single unit or 15 people? How's that enforced?
Well, if there's 18 or older is on the lease, and if anyone below that is not on the lease, but they are added, they're not a signer of the lease, but they're added onto the lease as a minor. If they have a family, if there's 2 parents and 4 children, that would be 6 people in a unit. We don't have room in these for 15 people in one unit.
Where is this documented so we can understand what the limits are?
I don't know that HUD tells you there's a limit. I think it's a guide, but I can look for it.
Okay, well, please share it with us.
And David, I believe the city has some enforcement power on occupancy.
Yes, we do have occupancy limits that are in the building code. So if there's a suspected violation, we can look into that and cite them for a violation.
So the city has enforcement power and over occupancy on units. Okay. I'm gonna try and make another last call. Last call on testimony for people who have not spoken previously on the proceedings this evening in front of the commission. All right, so I think that's it for this evening as far as the public comment is concerned. So I'm going to listen for my commissioners on what they wish to do going forward. Yeah, we could also, I'd be surprised, but Ms. Manning, if you have anything additional you'd like to say at this time. And/or your team. Yes, Commissioner Rittenhouse.
I have a question for staff with regards to the traffic report. David, have you ever had a situation where you have had to get a second report just to justify the first one, or you know, I'm saying just to kind of see the differences or similarities and, you know, verify the first report?
Well, we have the report reviewed by a third-party consultant. In this case, it was WBK, and they did ask for some additional data in the first review, and once that was provided, did a second review to get comfortable with the findings.
David? So Tracy, I guess you're fine for what's in the record right now. You have nothing additional to say at this time? Just want to check, make sure.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Mead.
Scott, I think just I sense that we're at a point where we're either going to close the public hearing or continue it for another 2 weeks. In looking back on tonight, and I've taken, as I said before, notes on all the key and appropriate topics for us to consider. Tonight, I think it's worth noting, I didn't hear any new issues. I think the issues that come before us for consideration and further discussion and deliberation are traffic, density, building orientation, runoff and flood control, the variances, property values. There was a comment on school multiplier. I think that's a broad, as someone pointed out earlier, I think it was you, Scott, that's a broader topic. That's not project specific. And then just the conditions in the staff report to add to any motion. And I was going to add one more to that. I don't think we need to go into that tonight because I don't think we're formulating a motion at this point, but it's important to note, I don't think there's been any new issues that have come up. So I think that's comforting. I think that even if there's some logistical issues with folks getting on the phone, I think we've covered and we've seen and we've witnessed and we've fielded all of the appropriate topics for us to consider. So I'm pretty comfortable that the virtual meeting has worked for this project and for the community. And I think we know what we have to consider and we know what we have to discuss and deliberate and debate before we can put forth a motion for a vote. So I think that's a good thing to come out of this, is that we haven't gotten anything new that's material, and we know what we've got to talk about. And I've got comments on each of those things, but I don't think you're ready to hear me say that tonight until we're ready to close the hearing and move on.
Well, I think we've created an extensive record in this format,
right.
Definitely. My only question with the commissioners is whether they feel they've got all the information they need on those questions and don't require additional input.
I have my microphone is open, so I'll speak. I have a feeling on each of those topics, and I'm in a position where I could go to vote on this myself, but I completely understand if folks need to hear other things or to digest further. But I've heard enough information from the applicant, from the community, and from you all that I'm in a position to make a decision.
Yeah, I just
and a
want to hear,
recommendation.
I just want to hear from the others, Commissioner Mead, so, whether everybody else
Yep.
feels the questions have been answered, materials submitted, if there's additional materials that you need submitted, additional questions that haven't been asked that you just haven't been given an opportunity to ask because we've been so heavy on the public input. So, Commissioner Evans.
I think I've heard enough. I don't require any additional information at this point.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Holman.
I've heard enough as well.
Commissioner Sifka.
I've heard enough as well.
Okay, that leaves Adam. Adam.
Yeah, I've heard enough.
Okay, and John's saying, giving me the thumbs up, so that means he's good, so I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mead, making a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Rittenhouse second.
Okay, got a second. Celeste, call the roll, please.
Okay. Madaskil.
Madaskil, aye.
Evans.
Evans, aye.
Hellerman.
Holloman, aye.
Mead.
Mead, aye.
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse, aye.
Slivka.
Slivka, aye.
And Stocking.
Stocking, aye.
Okay, motion passes.
All right, so we have a closed public hearing on this item. David, what's our meeting schedules look like?
We don't have anything scheduled at this time for any upcoming Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. So we have February 11th open. We also have, whatever that second date in February would be. February 25th
25th?
would be open.
All right. What's the commission's pleasure on that?
February 11th.
2 weeks is fine.
11th is good. Commissioner Sifka, what?
Yeah, the 11th.
11th's good. Sounds like it's Evans saying yes, Mr. Rittenhouse is saying yes, and so, Ms. Gill saying yes, so, okay, schedule it for February 11th at 7 p.m. And,
Ron Sandek, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't need a motion to schedule it for the 11th because the public hearing's been closed.
No.
We could just publish the agenda.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
and I'm assuming it will be virtual.
Yes, I believe so. We will
Remain
confirm that
consistent.
with the publication of the agenda, but even though we've moved to Tier 1 and we can occupy 25% of this room, that basically accommodates the commission, staff, and the applicant. So we will work on those procedures between now and then.
Okay, so most likely virtual, but we'll hear that. All right, so we'll see everybody on the 11th. Thanks everyone for attending, giving information. We've received a lot of input. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the time the public has committed to this and put in public comment. It's an extensive record. It's going to really help us in reaching a decision.
Scott, you just got to remind me whenever I make a motion to go past 10 o'clock not to put a time limit on it.
Yeah, I conveniently ignored that because right in the middle of it, and I'm not going to stop
Too many words come out
now.
of my mouth.
But I appreciate the sentiment.
There you go.
Do I hear a
Lesson learned.
motion? I need a motion and a second to make this official virtual. I learned the last meeting.
Yeah.
Ma'am, can you give us the initial motion?
Yeah. Move to adjourn? Is that what you're
That's
looking
what
for?
I'm looking for. I don't think we got anything else,
Okay.
right, David?
No, sir.
No, we don't have anything else. So, Mim, you're up.
Evans, move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Holloman, second.
Holman, second. Celeste, call a roll, please.
All right, Metaskill,
Madaskil, aye.
Evans,
Evans, aye.
Holloman,
Holloman, aye.
Mead,
Mead, aye.
Rittenhouse,
Rittenhouse, aye.
Lifka,
Lifka, aye.
and Stocking.
Stocking, aye.
That passes.
All right,
We
thank
are
you. Thank you,
adjourned.
Celeste. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
See you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.